Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. Joining me as always is my co-host, Mr. Cody Saftic. You guys can find him on Twitter at CJ Saftic. And we're here propping you up for UFC Vegas 20, headlined by another heavyweight matchup. We got Ciryl Gane going up against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Very, very interesting matchup. Almost has slight comparisons to last week's matchup in terms of how both guys can win this fight, but very much looking forward to breaking it down with my guy, Cody. Cody, we're in the midst of the schedule now with the UFC, right? Every single weekend, it feels like we're having a heavyweight fight almost headline every single card nowadays, right? And it's really trying to help us determine who's going to be next in line for a title shot. You excited for this one, or do you think the last week's card had more title implications than this one?
No, I mean, last week's card had 4 heavyweight fights, and I thought that they were all entertaining, and they all produced something good came out of it. You know, Sergey Spivak looked like he made tons of improvements. You have Tom Aspinall, you have Daukaus, both of them continuing their reigns and beating very credible opponents. And then the main event, the young dog does not come through. Oh, man, Curtis Blades, tough go at it. I mean, again, people always look good in spots against Derek Lewis until Derek Lewis does what Derek Lewis does, and that was a tough spot. So like you're saying, this week, the headliner kind of mirrors it in some ways, where you have the younger, more athletic Gane who's going to stick to the outside and use that speed and use that athleticism. And then with Rozenstruik, you've got, you know, he's 2 weeks removed from his 33rd birthday, so he's not super old, but he's the guy with the power. He's the guy that could land at any time. So, you know, spoiler alert, I am going Gane, so I'm really hoping that death blow does not get landed this week, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm hoping for some normalcy this weekend in MMA, right? Like you got the low variable outcome last weekend. I'm hoping that normalcy comes back into fruition here, and we see the actual more technical fighter, all around MMA fighter, pull off the victory. But we'll dive deeper into that matchup once we get to the main event there. So before we get into the breakdowns, as always, I want to remind you guys to make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe. It's a great way to support the show, as well as supporting odds.com as well too. So shout out to everybody that comes out on a week-to-week basis, joins us on Thursday nights, on Friday nights, and then obviously for the post show as well on Saturday nights as well too. All right, let's get this show on the road. Let's get it going. We had one fight fall off, I think, earlier today between Alonzo Menafield and William Knight. So luckily for us, we got one less fight to go over for you guys tonight. Not the whole 15 fight card that we had last week, but we do. I think we have, I think it's 10 or 11 fights at this point in time. But the first one that we got up is a 205-pound fight between Dustin Jacoby and Maxime Grishin. Current odds have Grishin around plus 160 and minus 185. And initially, when I went into taping this fight, I'm like, Grishin seems like a very intriguing dog, strictly off of his MMA experience alone, right? The guy has tons of fights, has been all over the world fighting, obviously mainly in Russia, has had some time over there in PFL as well too, fought the likes of Magomed, Ankalaev, and Sokoju on the regional scene as well. So you know his level of competition is up there, but how does he fare coming into the UFC, right? He's 1-1 now. You got Marcin Tybura up at heavyweight. Bad stylistic matchup for him, not to mention I believe it was a short notice fight. Then coming back down to 205 pounds, he gets Ganzamurad Antagulov, who is just one gear. You know, I mean, he goes out there, tries to take you down. If he's not successful in submitting you, the guy's more than likely going to be huffing and puffing for his efforts. And then Grishin really took advantage of him late in that second round and got the finish there. This fight, though, it seems like it's kind of a stylistically bad matchup for him, right? Jacoby, very solid striker, had a bunch of time over there at Glory Kickboxing, obviously working on his full MMA game. One thing that I do want to note is that one night tournament that he had, where it was just like they're all competing in different sports. You had an MMA fight where he goes out there and beats Cody East, a boxing fight where he beats this other guy, and then a kickboxing fight where he goes out there and demolishes the old vet, Tony Lopez. So Jacoby has definitely been all around the MMA game, coming out of Factory X Muay Thai as well too. I think he has a solid background, solid training camp, and his striking will definitely shine here. And one thing that I like that he does that a lot of the fighters that I back do is that calf kick, and I think that's going to be very crucial for him here against Grishin, who seems to accept the back foot a little bit more than I like, and I think it's going to be harder for him to kind of close that distance and get his game going, which in my opinion should be to grapple, make this a dirty fight, make it as close as possible, skin to skin, drag him to the ground, clinch up as much as you can. But I think that Jacoby is going to make it very, very tough for him to do so. So yeah, I like Jacoby by decision, and I believe that line is roughly around plus 200. I see a lot of people liking him inside the distance, but you got to give the benefit of the doubt to Grishin, right? Last time he got finished, the guy who's co-maining the card, Magomed Ankalaev. Do we think that Dustin Jacoby is Ankalaev level? That remains to be seen, right? But I'll give Grishin the benefit of the doubt here, and I'll say he takes this fight by decision. How do you see this one?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely looking at that over prop. I'm looking at the over 2.5 minus 130. I'm looking at fight goes the distance minus 110. If you were going to take Grishin, I think you're going to take Grishin by decision. Although Jacoby does have cardio issues, so there is a world that exists where he gets tired by the third round, and maybe Maxim Grishin is able to make something happen. But I'm not impressed with his run in the UFC at all. I mean, you look at a guy that has tons of experience on the regional scene. You know, he fought years in Russia. He actually fought in the States lots of times, you know, veteran of some decent promotions, has fought a lot of good name opponents, but a lot of those guys were over the hill, like you mentioned, you know, some of these older veterans of the game. He defeats those guys and he shows a lot of quick finishes over them, right? As far as his PFL run, you know, he's got those fights with Jordan, and you know, they were okay, you know, the draws, whatever. It's a weird system over there. He's got one knockout victory, but for the most part, he doesn't look like he's got a ton of power in his hands. It's not tons of power striking. As far as the submission game goes, yeah, it's okay. His wrestling, it's okay, but there's nothing really that he does extremely well. He's more so just like a generalist in the three areas of MMA. But as far as he comes into the UFC, what a tough spot. You're going to move up a weight class, take on Marcin Tybura, a ranked heavyweight, a durable ranked heavyweight, and he just got out grappled against the cage. That's no problem. It's the follow-up performance, the one with Antigulov, where this is a guy that's broken to bits. You know, most guys that fight him, they're under 1.5. You know, he gets tired, he beats them. There's spots in this where it's like Grishin does not look good. He again looks, I don't want to call him pillow-handed because you look at all the first round finishes the guy's got. But as far as being in the UFC goes, it just doesn't look like he's, you know, a top guy by any stretch. Now with Dustin Jacoby, here's a guy that as well was no good in the UFC. He went 0-2 10 years ago, lost to Clifford Starks. It's the improvements he's made in between, which is competing for glory, going to the Netherlands, living there for a year, competing and training and getting better and adding all of the kickboxing and then coming back to Colorado. And yes, cardio is a bit of an issue for him, but for the first 2 rounds, he's an excellent striker in there. And I think he's going to be able to more than hold his own in the spots against Grishin. And then if the third round, if for whatever reason he does get tired, I'm not banking on Grishin and get a finish. I do see this fight going to decision. So the way I would look at it is the over 2.5 looks pretty good because it's minus 130, very fair price tag. And at least it does eliminate late finish by Grishin via submission or something because Jacoby's tired, or Grishin's just taking a lot of damage because Jacoby's strikes are just added up on him. Kind of saves you a little bit of that. But if you want to get a little bit greasy with it, you're just going to take full decision. Minus 110, not that much better of a price tag, by the way, but you could just take fight goes the distance. You were saying Grishin by decision, so you're on the same boat. I'm going Jacoby by decision. Oh, sorry, okay. So we're on the same page, and I'm going to take Jacoby by decision as well, which is plus 200, which is like a pretty decent price tag. Now, the reason why, as well as like it's not just Grishin's fighting all these decisions, but Jacoby as well, right? He's fought into a few decisions where you've seen him on Contender Series, for example, against Ty Flores, where he lands a bunch of his heaviest shots, but eventually he gets tired. Eventually he has to slow down the pace. Fight goes the distance. As you mentioned, that fight with Cody East, a former UFC heavyweight as well, did not fare well in the UFC. Again, you know, he can settle into a pace against these guys and win a decision. He is a heavyweight, by the way. You keep that in mind. But with Maxim Grishin, not only did you mention the fact that it's like, okay, well, when was the last time he got finished? Oh, that in itself was 5 years ago against Magomed Ankalaev. But that was a 4th round finish, right? Yeah. So in any other fight, which is a 3-round fight, that fight is a decision, right? Okay, well, when did he get finished clean before that? It's like, well, the last time he got finished, or lost for that matter, was Kenny Garner, a heavyweight, right? And it was a 5th round stoppage, 53 seconds left in the fight, right? 5th round stoppage from Kenny Garner, a massive American heavyweight. So it's like, okay, well, when was the last time he got finished clean in a 3-round fight? Again, it was that heavyweight, Guram Gugashvili, died in a car accident. Big Georgian heavyweight, was undefeated at the time. You know, was a decent prospect, actually. And that fight was 10 years ago. So do I think Grishin has durability issues? No. He's got a 4th round finish to your co-main event guy, as you mentioned. He's got a 5th round finish to a massive Kenny Garner, which was really late in the fight. And the last time he got finished clean was 10 years ago. So I do say that Dustin Jacoby's got the kickboxing advantage. I do think he's the cleaner striker. I do think he's got good power, but I think Grishin's durable enough to take that damage. So if Grishin wins, I'm thinking it's by decision, but I'm going with Jacoby. I'm thinking it's by decision. And more so than that, if you don't want to pick a winner on either side, just hit that over. That over 2.5 looks pretty good to me. Because again, I got a feeling we're going to bank some rounds in here.
The only thing that would have me stressing out a bit if I have a Jacoby decision ticket or the over is if he's just super effective with that calf kick right off the bat, and you see Grishin really starting to wear it early in that fight, and we can see him possibly open up his hands and maybe get a TKO of some sort like that. But I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Grishin here, and I definitely like that overplay that you're talking about, and even the plus 200 on Jacoby. I think that's a solid spot. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Ronnie Lawrence coming in against Vince Cachero, who's making his second walk to the octagon. Last time he came in on short notice against Jamal Emmers, up a weight class, and you could definitely tell the size difference in that fight when they were fighting. Jamal Emmers is clearly much bigger than him there and had a lot of success with the wrestling. And you got to, give some, some credit to the fact that he was the much bigger guy in there, and that was a good attributing factor to that. But when you're talking about a Ronnie Lawrence guy here, right? The guy loves to move, great kicks from the outside, good footwork, and then when he needs to, turns on that wrestling mode and is able to get the fight to the ground. And given what I've been seeing from him, in terms of where he's been like training, it seems like he's based out of Tennessee, but as of late has been spending time down there at Sanford MMA, which has been great for a lot of guys that are spending time down there, right? We're seeing a lot of guys as of late. Jared Gordon is one that comes to mind that has been having success since moving to that camp. And Ronnie Lawrence, still relatively young in his MMA career, only has 7 fights. I think he has a high upside, especially given his fighting style. I like the way he approaches the game. He doesn't take too many risks. He moves well enough, but still has good enough output that he's able to go out there and kind of just outkick his opponent. And then when it's required, he goes out there and gets the takedown. And we've seen Cachero almost have trouble at times, not just the Jamal Emmers fights, but his past fights too, where he's just not doing the best in terms of stuffing takedowns. Now, he does a good job of getting back to his feet. I'll give him that. But the fact that he's just giving up takedowns leads me to believe that Ronnie Lawrence seems like he has a solid gas tank, should be able to go a full 15 minutes with that type of game plan and that type of approach. And I think it's going to cause Cachero fits here, who, in my opinion, is more of a striker, needs to get his hands going, get his kicks going for him to truly have success. But I think that Ronnie Lawrence just brings such an unorthodox style, again, with his movement. It's not like he's running. He's just staying on the outside enough and then coming in, getting his strikes off and then getting back out. And then sometimes you just don't know. Like, he mixes it up so well that you don't know if it's a kick coming, if it's a punch coming, or if it's a takedown coming. And I think that's really going to confuse Cachero here. In terms of finishes, I don't really see this fight finishing inside the distance. Cachero's pretty durable. I'll give him that. The only time I think he's been finished is to Casey Kenny from that brutal knee, which is really good. I think that was back in LFA. And then for the Ronnie Lawrence side, he's more of a decision guy than he is finishing. Right, he has a couple finishes on his record, but given his style, it seems like he doesn't overextend himself to really go out there for the finish. It's more so get those takedowns, land the point fight strikes from the outside, but more often not just try to drag this fight to the ground. So in terms of a prop, obviously I'm going to be going with Ronnie Lawrence by decision, plus 125. Even though over 2.5 is minus 270, I think that's a little bit too juicy for my liking. Fight goes to decision, minus 245, but I do heavily lean Lawrence here, as I feel like he has more tools to get this fight done. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I like Ronnie Lawrence a lot, actually. So we know Ronnie Lawrence from the Contender Series, right? He was on Dana White's Contender Series. He comes out, he fights for the contract. Leading into that fight, I mean, the highly propped up guy was this Jose Johnson, who's just got like a super long-rangey frame. He had a tons of finishes. He had a lot of experience. And it was just like, he's going to run through this Ronnie Lawrence, who is plus 260. So I'm tape studying that, and I really like what I see at a Ronnie Lawrence. His one loss is to Steve Garcia. It was in Bellator. It was a 29-28 decision. He just kind of got a little out hustled in the grappling a little bit, but he's young. Steve Garcia, Craig Jackson, Mike Winklejohn fighter, made it to the UFC as well. We saw him in the Luis Pena fight, not fare so well with his grappling there. Yeah. But again, it's like, that's not a bad loss by no stretch. I liked what I saw out of him. He's building, and like you said, he's got a lot of nice movement. He's got nice kicks from the outside. He was based in Tennessee. That's where he was fighting predominantly for the majority of his career. And then he made it out to like Deerfield Beach, Florida. So with ATT, right, we all know about American Top Team like Coconut Creek, but there's ATT Sunrise and ATT like, there's just Georgia. A pile of them. Yeah, there's a pile of them that are kind of spread out, right? And he spent some of his time at some of these other ones, but he was working with Billy Patton, who's one of the boxing coaches at ATT, and apparently the kid's, he's still only 28, making a lot of improvements, good kick game, good striking altogether, good cardio. Wrestling was kind of his one little, issue, but working on it a ton, getting better. And then, as you mentioned, going out to Sanford MMA now, they've got a great team there. You're going to have a plethora of good bodies to be working with. I just expect Ronnie Lawrence to be getting better and better, right? I honestly Liked what I saw on tape. He goes out there. He absolutely delivers and pulls off the upset win over Jose Johnson in a fight that he looked very comfortable in. And now he makes his UFC debut against Vince Cachero. So technically he is coming on short notice. That would be a bit of a problem. But when you're a young guy training at a high level, you just want a contract on Dana White's Contender Series. They give you the contract. You don't just go like hang out on the couch. There's no doubt about it that they were like, stay ready. We've got cards that need to be filled. And I would expect him to come out here in good shape. With Vince Cachero, again, he is more predominantly a striker. He would like to keep this fight striking. And I think that Ronnie Lawrence could keep the fight striking with him. But he's also able to mix in the wrestling and the grappling. And it all leads to probably a decision, right? Cachero's, he's durable enough. I know he did get knocked out by Casey Kinney, which, nobody really gets knocked out by Casey Kinney. But a knee to the face, especially like that. Like
so well timed.
Yeah, it's just one of those moves, man. Like, it's going to happen. I'll give him that. That is the only time he has been finished. He does seem like a fairly durable guy. And it's no disrespect to Ronnie Lawrence. I'm high up on his skills, but he doesn't look like that might translate to big finishes like at a high level, at least not yet. So, again, I'm on full board on you. I got Ronnie Lawrence by decision. I wanted to just fight goes to decision, but again, the odds makers all over that. So It's not a very good price. So if you are going to pick Ronnie Lawrence, then you're going to improve his price tag, which is, again, not great in itself. You improve that with that decision prop and you can get plus money out of it. So I'm in on that play.
Right there with you. I do want to give a shout out to John Kelly in the comment section saying that Ronnie Lawrence has that use of the law of movement, but better wrestling. And I think that's a bang on comparison here. I do think that he will be more successful in the grappling realm than we've seen as of late. And Yusuf Zalal last time around against Troy, obviously not giving the best account of himself. So hopefully Ronnie Lawrence can go out there and demonstrate something similar, but obviously much better wrestling and completing the takedowns. All right. Let's move along to the 135-pound division. In the women's division, we got Alexis Davis coming in against Sabina Mazo. Big dog odds here are relatively big dog odds. Plus 175 for Davis, minus 210 for Sabina Mazo. This fight, one thing that I didn't like is the fact that Sabina Mazo just seems so uncomfortable fighting off her back foot. And I feel like Alexis Davis, that's almost one thing we can guarantee from her is that she's always going to be moving forward. She's like a zombie mode type of fighter. She's 36 years old at this point in time. But one thing you can kind of give to her as a positive is that, her striking isn't amazing or anything like that, but it's still improving it. We're seeing improvements from it on a fight-to-fight basis. But her be-all, end-all is get that clinch, try to get this fight to the ground, especially against a much technical striker in Sabina Mazo here, who herself is probably making immense amounts of improvements. She's only 23 or 24 years old. She's training over there at King's MMA, but I just don't like what I've been seeing from her as of late. I had some money on her against her in that Justine Kish fight, where Kish fought a great fight. Just did not let Sabina get comfortable, kept moving forward, pretty much outstruck her in the sense of pressuring her and then doing good work with it. The numbers obviously say Mazo, but the damage and the forward movement and the pressure and the way the fight looks, the optics of the fight was definitely in Justine Kish's corner. And even if you look up the judges' scorecards there, I know this fight didn't go to a decision, but you see at least two of the judges gave Justine Kish those first two rounds. And I feel like we can get a similar type of performance here out of Alexis Davis, who's going to continue to be moving forward. Obviously, she's going to be eating some shots and she won't be winning the volume here. But given how the last fight went for Sabina Mazo, I think that this is a tough matchup for her. You're talking about Alexis Davis, who's made a name for herself at 135 pounds. Now Sabina Mazo is going up to that weight class. And some people might say that it's giving Sabina a little bit more power now, and she might be able to knock out Davis. Davis says, she's been quite durable throughout her career, right? Outside of that Ronda Rousey finish, she's been quite durable throughout her career. So that's one thing we can almost depend on her for. So I'm kind of liking this plus 175 line. I think that we might even get a little bit more Sabina Mazo love closer to this fight. I'm kind of hoping for plus 200 before I officially pull the trigger. But I like Davis to make this a dirty fight, clinch up against her, maybe get this fight to the ground, but at all times just be moving forward, pressuring Mazo, and making it a very difficult fight for her. So obviously, I don't think that Davis subs her. I don't think that Davis KOs her. So the side that I'd be going with is Davis by sub, which is plus 250. I think that's a solid line. How are you seeing this one?
You mean Davis by decision is plus
Davis by decision, sorry.
Yeah,
sub? My bad.
Yeah. No, all good. Because I was thinking the same thing. I'm going to hit a pass on this fight because I definitely see Davis as the value side. I would agree with all your assessment there for sure. But that being said, it's like, I've got Alexis Davis, hasn't won a fight in 3.5 years, is very, very slow at this point. striking ain't what it used to be. Wrestling, but she's got the grind. She's got a good chin. And you've got to give this girl one thing, right? She takes a few years off. She has a kid, starts a family, comes back to the UFC. And it's like, oh, welcome back, Katlyn Chookagian. Okay, this girl's fast, up and comer. She's going to be a title challenger. Tough fight to come back to, but she goes out there and she fights Katlyn Chookagian. Next time out, it's like, oh, we just signed Invicta champion Jennifer Maia. We're building her up to title contention. You seen how good she was when she eventually got there. It's like, boom, she gets the Alexis Davis rub. And then the same thing in her next fight as well. It's like she draws Viviane Arroyo, who's just, right. So I agree with you. Now she's drawn a 23-year-old fighter who's still very green, doesn't fight particularly well off the back foot, but also doesn't fight well off of her back. If you are able to take her down, that's one of her big disadvantages is she's got these super long limbs. And standing, she will just bop at you all day. Long, rangy kick game from the outside. She's got good head kicks, good leg kicks. She'll go to the body, good rangy jab, likes to stay to the outside. Volume. Not a ton of power, but volume, just pick away at you. And with Alexis Davis, she's just crashing forward the whole time. Then, she'll get hit with a few shots, but eventually if she can make it grindy, get into the clinch, get her up against the cage. Davis has decent dirty boxing, decent knees from the clinch, or sorry, not knees, but decent elbows from the clinch, and just grind her up against the cage. But beyond that, get the fight to the ground. Now, Alexis Davis is not particularly known for her wrestling, nor is that something that we feel confident that you can continuously bank on, but for what it's worth, she did take down Jennifer Maia. She did take down Katlyn Chookagian. She did take down Liz Carmouche. She did take down Sarah Kaufman. Those are all like, okay, so you telling me she can't take down Sabina Mazo? No, she could. What she needs to do, though, is she needs to score 2 takedowns. Yeah. She needs to get that takedown in the first round, grind her up against the cage. That's all well and good. Make this a dirty fight. Take her down, win that first round. Go and do it in the second round, do it again. But with Mazo, it's like Mazo is going to be a very nice prospect. We're just trying to gauge, is Davis a little too much, a little too soon, right? Is all the accolades we talk about Davis as well, right? She fought like 95% of her career at 135 pounds. This is at 125. She's going to be strong in there, man. But she's going to be way slower than Mazo. And Mazo, even though she is 23, she does have a really nice striking game. Out of King's MMA, as you mentioned, Rafael Cordero, they're high up on her. She's making a lot of improvements. Her grappling, as I mentioned, that's her kryptonite, but it is improving. It's just at what point has she made those improvements? So when I saw the money line, I was like, I don't like it, but I really like this fight goes the distance. And then I saw that line is minus 345. It's like, nah. So they're on the same page. So now if you're going to take Mazo, then you would take Mazo by decision, right? Davis, 3-fight losing streak, sure, but went to the decision in all 3 fights against 3 good opponents. And girls like Katlyn Chookagian and Viviane Arroyo, they hit as hard as Sabina Mazo. Like, she's not a power puncher, just a volume puncher, but she's faced that. She should be fine. Should be decision. And if you are going to take Alexis Davis, instead of taking that plus 175, which is already good, why not chase that plus 225 by Alexis Davis by decision, right? So I hear you, but I'll call myself a coward on this one. Like, I'll be happy if the Canadian wins for sure.
Yeah.
But I see the massive flaws here too. She is at the tail end of her career. She is up on the chopping block if she loses this fight. She has looked way slower in her recent fights than she has in the past. You can make the argument it's because it's against stiff competition, but you can also make the argument that they're using her to springboard Sabina Mazo, which makes a lot more sense, right? Hey, we got a very young, exciting, talented fighter. Let's give her the Alexis Davis rub, which we did on the other 3 girls, right? Like that to me makes as much sense. So I think I'm just going to pass, but I see where you're saying with the value side of it and the good plus money and the number that you could hit. Davis, it does make sense. I get it.
One thing I do want to bring up about her last 3 fights, which were all losses, like you said, she did slightly outstrike each woman in that fight, which I find interesting. But again, still obviously lost those fights. And numbers only tell so much of a story. You got to watch the fight itself to see how it actually transpired. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got another short notice guy here, Alex Oliveira fighting Ramazan Kuramagomedov, coming over, I believe. He did spend 1 fight in the CFFC, was on the Contender Series as well too, where he fought to I believe it was a split decision against Jordan Williams. The kid looks good. Like, he's one of those Mark Henry Dagestani prospects, right? Not the AKA Dagestani prospect, because there's a difference there, right? You usually see the AKA guys a little bit more wrestling dominant, a little bit more wrestling centric. compared to these Mark Henry guys that are like the Zabits that go out there and throw all this spinning shit and a very kick-heavy game. And don't get me wrong, they have a good wrestling game to back it up. Timur Valiyev, another guy as well too. But they seem a little bit more comfortable on the feet than the guys that come out of the AKA camp. And that's what we're getting with Ramazan, right? When you see his Robert Hale fight, there's not too much to draw from that other than the fact that Robert Hale seemed very comfortable just fighting that fight on the outside. He let Ramazan get very comfortable with his striking game, especially his kicks. I think they even put the statistics up in terms of kicks versus punches. And obviously Robert Hale was the one landing the punches, and there was like 70, 80 plus kicks that Ramazan was landing throughout that fight. So great performance in that fight. But then when you see him against Jordan Williams, who's not willing to just sit back and let him kick his leg off and let him win that fight that way, you see him kind of struggle a little bit, and you see the gas tank start to catch up to him too, because he's actually fighting somebody that wants to fight, that wants to take it to him and isn't scared of just sitting back and just, getting outpointed. And that's what Jordan Williams did, right? He took him to the brink. He took him further than any other past fighter has taken him, and we saw some flaws in his game. The Trevor Olesen fight, I believe is the guy's name. The first 2.5 minutes look a little bit shaky for Ramazan, right? You see Trevor having success with his hands, getting some good shots off, and it looks like Ramazan is a little bit uncomfortable. Then throws on his wrestling singlet, takes his fight to the ground, and that completely changes the trajectory of the fight, wins that fight, second round rear naked choke. Now you get Alex Cowboy Oliveira, right? This guy has seen those Jordan Williams types of wars. He's been in the cage. He's fought the who's who in the UFC, right? He has that longevity in the UFC. My only issue, though, is I wish we had somebody a little bit more reliable than Cowboy to go out there and fade a guy like Ramazan Kuramagomedov, who's just making his debut. I think he's only 22 or 23 years old, so very, very, very young still. Has some greenness to his game, in my opinion. But I wish we could trust Oliveira more. The comparison I've been making throughout the week is if you watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, there's that Charlie character who's just a wild card, right? He just doesn't give a fuck. You don't know what kind of fighter you're going to get, whether he's just going to be that Peter Sabota type performance where he's just sticking on the outside and really just getting his kicks going up the middle to the body, or we're going to see the Yancy Medeiros one where he just gasses himself out and then gets finished late. However, given all the statistical facts and all the historical facts that we have leading into this fight, I still lean Cowboy Oliveira as I give him the experience advantage, given the fact that he's been in these types of wars that this fight will more than likely turn into. And what we've seen from Ramazan is when he's pushed, he just doesn't look the greatest. Yeah, he got his hand raised against Jordan Williams, but where do we rate Jordan Williams compared to a guy like Alex Cowboy Oliveira? So I lean Cowboy ever so slightly. I lean him to this fight could potentially go under 2.5. This fight could potentially not go to a decision, but if we see a methodical and strategic Cowboy, I kind of prefer him to win by decision, which is plus 250. Even though over 2.5 and minus 200 or minus 120 could be a good spot. Unfortunately, we don't have the submission or KO props or anything like that. But yeah, I'm leaning with the Oliveira side here, and I'm leaning with him by decision. How are you feeling about this one?
Okay, so I'm going to lean the other side and go Ramazan. Okay. But again, we see this week in and week out. Is a guy making his UFC debut, right? Versus a guy that has been there and done that and has fought a who's who of the top guys and has, again, he's a wild card. Sometimes he looks really good. Sometimes he doesn't look really good, but has a legitimate skill set. This guy's a veteran of the sport. Taking on a guy making his UFC debut, and you're getting a dog money on that savvy veteran. So that in itself is always going to be viewed as value. The other thing you got to realize, though, is Cowboy Oliveira is getting ready to fight Randy Brown in this spot, in a fight that I'm going to hammer the line on Randy Brown, but that's a good high-level fight. Surely he's getting prepared. Randy Brown drops out, and you've got Kuramagomedov coming in as a replacement. So it's like, yeah, barely. So it's like, man, this guy taking the fight on short notice, like making a debut, taking the fight on short notice, taking on that savvy veteran, like it all makes sense to me, right? But I truly do believe that Cowboy Oliveira is just a guy that is not quite motivated as much anymore. He's a guy that comes in there and is just a way more lackadaisical. There was a time he was cutting weight to 155. He was hungry. He was huge. He was physically, like, actually really hungry. So huge at the weight class, right? Cutting down that weight, a big time factor. Comes to 170, not quite as strong, but fills out. He's a guy that relies on, he can muscle you to the ground, doesn't have great wrestling, but is just very physically strong, former bull rider. His striking, not super technical, but a ton of power. He'll come at you. But in recent fights, win or lose, he just doesn't look like he's that eager to be in there anymore. And his volume's completely fallen off a cliff. So he looked really good early against Gunnar Nelson. And then after that, Gunnar Nelson got to him. It is what it is. He gets submitted. No big deal. I just want to talk about the fights beyond that, right? So his next fight, he loses to Mike Perry, head scratcher, but he gets outlanded 65-48 in a 15-minute fight. He lands 48 strikes on Mike Perry. Striker versus striker, 48 strikes. It's low volume, right? The fight versus versus Nicholas Dalby, his next fight, he landed 18 strikes over 15 minutes, right? He landed 3 takedowns and 18 strikes. Not looking to exert himself. Loses the fight to Nick Dalby. The Max Griffin fight, he wins a split decision. Arguably that he lost that fight, right? And over the course of 15 minutes, my friend, he lands 40 significant strikes. It's very low output. The very next put, Peter Sabata, 15-minute fight, 45 significant strikes. And then against Rakhmonov his last time out, again, he didn't look like he was super interested. He is having trouble making 170, even though he's, supposed to be the natural 55er, was big at 55, maybe not natural 55er, but he struggles to make the weight. He comes in kind of half lackadaisical, and Rakhmonov just totally takes advantage of that. So as much as I can think to myself, you know what? Kuramagomedov didn't look awesome against Jordan Williams in the Contender Series, did he? And he did not get awarded the contract as well. Yeah. And the next fight as well against CFFC, he doesn't look good early. But one thing I'll give the guy is output doesn't really seem to be an issue. He actually landed 175 strikes on Williams. It was like a really high pressure fight where he eventually got tired because there's just like a lot of action. And we've seen with Jordan Williams, he can do that to you, right? He can push that kind of pace. And then his last fight, as you mentioned, against Olsen, doesn't look very good early, but it's like he's able to eventually break these guys. He's not the AKA Dagestani. He's more of the Timur Valiev type. However, he's got these little skills everywhere. And I think with Cowboy Oliveira, there's a couple paths to victory here. If you keep this fight standing, all you just got to do is outpoint him, right? He's only gonna try to land 50 significant strikes. He's not going to throw a ton. You can just outpoint him. If he tries to take you down, you got to keep this fight standing. But again, being out of a good gym, which he is, training with good wrestlers, that should all help him. If the fight hits the ground, just don't get submitted. Why? Because wrestling is the most taxing. And with Cowboy Oliveira, he himself does not have very good cardio. Yeah. So if he's going to go out there with a game plan of wrestle, it's going to gas him out big time. If he goes out there with a game plan of just hang back and strike, he should get outpointed. So I would think the other Ramazan, Kuramagomedov gets the job done here. But I could see things going south. Like I mentioned, we see these spots every week where it's like, oh, I like the skills that this guy's shown on the regional scene against very limited level of competition. Now he's taking a fight in the UFC. It's his debut. You get the nerves, you get the bright lights, you get all of that. Plus, it's short notice for him. Taking on like a savvy veteran, not some other dude coming up the Contender Series, not some other dude who's had a handful of fights and is a mixed bag in the UFC. Like he's 2-1 in his last 3 fights in the UFC at a high level. And the one loss, Rakhmonov.
Oh, you hit the mute. Still hit the mute. Man, there we go.
Way too excited about Rakhmonov. Okay.
I know.
Decent prospect for sure. But anyways, regardless, I think that I would side with the Russian fighter. Love siding with the Russian fighters. Think that Cowboy Oliveira has one foot out the door, but do recognize the dangers as you're talking about.
For sure. It's always tough to put money against a Russian, especially when, the guy that you want to back would be Alex Cowboy Oliveira, who's just so flaky at times. So yeah, for me, it's a pass. What's the prop that you're looking at for this fight, though? You think he gets it done inside the distance? You think he gets it done via decision? How are you seeing it?
Yeah, I think he gets it done inside the distance. And
plus 190.
Yeah, plus 190. I also looked at maybe like he gets it done by TKO, but honestly, if you're going to get plus 190 on an inside the distance prop, I think you just chase that. Could this fight also go to decision? Yeah, absolutely. Do I like this fight on a prop standpoint? Not entirely, because again, Cowboy Oliveira, tough guy, does have some merit to him, could last the decision. But if the fight goes the way I think it will, and Ramazan's just able to overwhelm him with volume down the stretch, then hopefully he gets him done inside the distance. I'm looking to mostly pass, but the prop that I would pick if you had to pick one prop on this fight would be that inside the distance Kuramagomedov plus 190.
Perfect. Shout out to Lloyd in the comments saying he wants to see Cowboy on scales first. And I think that's a very good approach as well whenever you're betting his fights. There are times where he looks pretty bad on the scales and it showcases in his fights as well too. So definitely keep your eye out for that. And then obviously make sure you guys join us tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern for the final weigh-in so we can actually break that down for you guys as well too. All right, let's keep things moving along. Another short notice fight that got put together, but for both fighters this time. We got Angela Hill against Ashley Yoder. This is a rematch of a fight that went down roughly 4 years ago where Angela Hill came out on the winning side via decision, but albeit not by a huge wide margin, which she should be a minus 400 this time around, right? Everybody loves them some Angie Hill, thinking that she's going to go out there and give you this efficient performance of just dancing around, landing a couple shots here and there, maybe even engage in the clinch a little bit, get some elbows going, get some knees going. But more often than not, she is just fighting to these razor close fights and then always comes out on the other side like, I won that fight. I won that fight. Not according to the judges, though, and that's what matters too, right? The Claudia Gadelha fight, she can say what she wants about that. She came out with an L. The Michelle Waterson fight, she can say what she wants about that, but she came out with an L. And it's going to look really, really bad if you're laying minus 350, minus 400 on a fighter that fights as closely as she does. Now, the differences here are obviously they've both made some improvements, right? I believe the first time they fought, it was Angela Hill's second stint in the UFC, where she takes the short notice fight against Jessica Andrade to get back into the UFC after winning the Invicta title. And then she comes back and fights Ashley Yoder after that and beats her via decision. Yoder back then a purple belt. Now she's a black belt. So she's obviously been training very hard in the jiu-jitsu discipline to try to round out that part of her game. And you see her quite successful with it against Miranda Granger last time around, even racking up a 10-8 in that third round. Just complete control and domination in that round. And we see what Yoder, when she's at the top of her game, what she looks like. Now, don't get me wrong. Miranda Granger is obviously a far cry from Angela Hill, so you're not going to get the same type of opposition there. But this is another spot similar to the Alexis Davis fight where I kind of favor the value on the underdog here in Yoder, who should probably make this fight close. Now, this isn't a fight that Angela Hill is going to go out there and finish her. So more than likely, it's going to go to the judges' scorecards. And whenever it goes to the judges' scorecards for Angie, it's always a close fight. So why not take a little bit of a gamble on the plus 300-ish dog that you're getting on Yoder? And even better, taking the decision prop on Yoder as well, too, which is, I believe, in the plus 450 range. Plus 460 is what it's currently at. So we know that Yoder has the advantage here in terms of size and reach. I think it's a 4-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage, but she does a good job of closing the distance. She's getting slightly better with the striking. She's training over there at Dan Henderson's training facility. And more often than not, when you see her training footage, she's working the clinch game. She's working that game up against the fence, up against the wall, trying to find ways to drag fights to the ground. And knowing that she's simply doing that gives me enough reason to go out there and want to take a little bit of a shot here, or even a half unit shot, which is what I did at plus 205 on Yoder, who's going to make this a close fight, who's not going to get knocked out, who will be able to, close that distance, push her up against the cage, and possibly land a couple takedowns. She was able to do so in the first fight too. Maybe she didn't get as much control time as she was hoping to that time around, but now she's a black belt, so who knows? Maybe that just works out better for her. But what we do see often from Angela Hill is she gets taken down, but she does a really good job of getting back to her feet. The difference here again from like Claudia Gadelha to Ashley Yoder is we know Gadelha only has cardio for like a round and a half, and then she starts to not be as successful with takedowns and clinching and grappling with her opponents, whereas Yoder has that 15-minute cardio to make this a close fight from minute 1 to minute 15. So, yeah, I'd be willing to take the little bit of a sprinkle here and not be parlaying Angela Hill at minus 400. To take a phrase from you, I think she could potentially be an apple pie shitter here, fighting how close she does in most of her fights. So, yeah, Hill could obviously win this fight, but it's going to be close. And I'd rather have my money on the value side here, especially at such wide odds. I wouldn't even be surprised if she's like plus 350, plus 650 by the time, or not 650, plus 360 or so by the time the fight goes off. So I'm on the Yoder side here, ever so slightly by decision. Again, just value here. That's where I'm trying to spot. Am I off here? How are you seeing this one?
No, I don't think you're off at all. And in fact, when you look back to the last time they fought, I mean, Ashley Yoder scored 3 takedowns, and that was actually her best performance in the UFC in terms of takedowns. Like, that's the most success she's had. But she's had pockets of success with the wrestling in almost all of her fights. If she's going to win, it's going to win by that grind. And like you said, dirty boxing up against the cage. Try to peel this fight to the ground when you can. When you do get to the ground, try to be heavy with the hips. She is a BJJ black belt. She has competed in jiu-jitsu tournaments, but as far as being in the UFC goes, she used that to her benefit. You see the same thing in her last time out. It's like her keys to victory is always going to be making this a grind. Now, she's had 8 fights in the UFC, and all 8 fights have gone to decision. When you look at the prop on this fight to go to decision, minus 335. Everybody knows this fight's going to decision. So again, with Yoder, you're getting a girl that's likely going to be in there for 3 full rounds. In these close fights that are decisions, against Angela Hill, likes to fight decisions, likes to fight close decisions, why not take that underdog shot in a fight that's going the distance? But when you see the prop on Ashley Yoder by decision plus 460, it just screams at you like, oh man, if this fight is closer to 50-50, and you'd expect to maybe get like, okay, and we all know it's going to decision. The line maker knows that. They're on the same side. We're all in agreeing. Like, could she submit Angela Hill? Yep, that is possible. But is that the most likely scenario? No, I don't think so. Could she knock out Angela Hill? Well, this is MMA. But is that the likely scenario? No, not at all. This fight probably is going the distance. Flip side to that with Angela Hill, likes to fight, goes the distance. We're all on the same page there. So if you do like Yoder, yeah, that's a big money prop to be chasing after. And I'll admit, if I was going to pick a prop that I like on this fight, I like that one. Angela Hill, the one thing I will give her is the last time they fought, she does get taken down 3 times. Her wrestling doesn't look good. But like you said, she's always manages to get back up and keep working. And she does have a very clear, significant striking advantage and output advantage. But since that fight, she's fought in the UFC 11 times. Yoder's fought in the UFC 6 times. So that Angela Hill's just like made a lot of improvements to her game, has fought some of the best girls in the division. And with Ashley Yoder, it's middling. It's always kind of mid-level people. Like Hill should be the favorite, just not this big of a favorite. So if you're chasing money plays that have an absolute shot of hitting, you're seeing this week in and week out with all these cards. There's going to be dogs that are hitting on this card. And a plus 460 just looks really, it's a really nice little price tag. So definitely worth a shot, I think, with Ashley Yoder. She just got to make this a grinding affair. Do I love it? No. Is it going to be a sweat? Absolutely. But if it comes through, and does have a chance to come through, if it comes through, going to be well worth it.
For sure. You got it. It's almost like an auto bet at this point, right? Given how close Hill's fights normally are, knowing that it's going to go to a decision, you might as well just take a shot at getting a little bit of a bigger payout here. So I'm glad that we're kind of on the same line of thinking there. All right, let's move on to the next one, the prelim headliner. We got a great fight here at 155 between Alexander Hernandez and Thiago Moises. I believe we got Hernandez close to minus 200 at this point. And then Thiago Moises, obviously the return there is plus 170. The way that I see this is I kind of find it hard to see how Thiago Moises wins this fight unless Alexander Hernandez's gas tank just falls off a cliff after that 1.5 round mark, because he's obviously going to be the better striker here. I think more power, more explosive, way better speed in his hands as well too. And then obviously the wrestling advantage too, right? I think it would be weird to see Moises actually complete a takedown, or not just complete a takedown, but be able to successfully keep Hernandez there. I think Hernandez will do a good job of keeping this in the striking range. The knock that I've just been seeing on Hernandez all week is his cardio. He's going to have a cardio dump, and that's where Moises is going to start to take over. But like, if you simply draw that from the Drew Dober fight, I think you're kind of blinding yourself, right? Look at how Dober approached that fight. He stayed in his face the entire time, had the striking and the explosiveness to back it up, which I don't think that Thiago Moises has. And he was able to really put it on Hernandez and not let him breathe. I'd be surprised if we see that from Moises, because if he tries that, I think the speed is going to kill him here, and Hernandez kind of just countering him will do a really good job of kind of scaring Moises away. Now, I will give credit to Moises. I think he's one of the better strikers when it comes to a guy that's coming from a BJJ background. He has a couple nice head kick finishes on his record as well too, but I don't think the striking is comparable here to the point that Hernandez will be completely outstruck in this fight. Again, the main caveat here is, does Hernandez truly have cardio issues? I'm siding on the no side. And one thing I do want to add to this before I throw it over to you is, I love that he moved over to Factory X MMA, right? He was training before out of a San Antonio, a small, dingy little gym that not a lot of people are really coming out of, maybe not the highest level of coaching either. Now he finds himself up there with Mark Montoya, really integrating himself with that team too, right? Like the first time they had the Fight Island events, he goes out there to corner Brandon Royval, and he wasn't even fighting. He didn't need to do that, but he goes out there and he does it because he wants to be a proper teammate. He wants to make the changes to truly be a legitimate fighter in the UFC, and maybe even change up his character, because everybody hates the guy, right? Apparently he's the most dislikable guy in the UFC, given all the comments that I've been seeing as of late when I've been breaking down this fight. But he's doing all the right things, in my opinion, that you want to see from a fighter at his age that's been through the shit that he's been through, especially with them feeding him to the lions right after he knocked out Dariush in his debut. but I think there's still a lot of upside for Hernandez, and I'm glad that he's changed camps, and I believe they will really round out his game very, very well, especially in a fight here against Thiago Moises that I think stylistically works out very good for him. Moises obviously has the BJJ advantage, but I don't see the fight truly hitting the ground. Again, asterisk being if Hernandez's gas tank doesn't fall off a cliff. I like Hernandez here. I think he wins by decision. I think that prop is currently around plus 125. The Hernandez finish could potentially be live, but you have to give the benefit of the doubt here to Thiago Moises, who has a granite chin, right? The guy's eating a ton of shots. Hernandez might just be another level, though. The speed, the accuracy, and the explosiveness should translate into the power. And if he lands correctly on Thiago Moises, he could probably finish him early in this fight. But I think the safer side is the decision at plus 125. I like Hernandez. Am I crazy? How are you seeing this one?
No, again, I'm on the same page for this for sure. I like Alexander Hernandez. Again, he's still really young, but he just talked to himself. Guy can talk a mad game. I'll give him that. Yeah. He talked himself into one hell of a situation, right? Yeah. You come into the UFC, debuting against Beneil Dariush. It's like in the huge underdog win in the first round knockout and like all the glory. It's like that in itself was super tough. But just because you came in and caught Beneil at that forum, that doesn't make you a well-refined top 10 contender, you know, headlining cards, getting into all the spotlight. Like he was still super green. And you said it best yourself, right? He's in a small little gym in Texas, right? I think he's the big dog in the gym. He goes in there. Who the fuck is going to compete with this guy, right? He's a physical animal. He's a specimen, super aggressive, great athlete. He's a really good wrestler. He's got mad power. The guy's a dick, you know what I mean? Like he probably takes it hard on his training partners, and there's nobody there that can give it back to him. So now he's got this self-belief where it's like, I'm great. Goes out there, and that I'm great, that self-belief, it does get him the win over Beneil Dariush. And in his second fight against Ove Mercy, it's a decision. I thought he looked like he showed a well more refined game, using his wrestling, you know, scoring the 4 takedowns, like showing decent grappling against a guy who's a judo black belt and a BJJ black belt in Ove Mercy, you know, getting those 15 minutes in him. And then all of a sudden it's like he is talking a whack game against Cowboy Cerrone, and he pays a massive price for it. Fight should have been probably stopped a lot earlier. He takes a lot of damage. But you still see where it's like this guy is a very good athlete. He's hittable. He's not super refined in his striking, but there's still something to like there. There's still what could be a prospect. The fight with Trinaldo is next time after the Cerrone fight. Did not look good. Fights in Texas, his backyard. He's the Texas boy. He gets the favorable hometown rub, gets the decision, but doesn't look great. And then you talk about the Drew Dober fight. Again, doesn't look great. But when you look at the Cerrone fight and the Dober fight especially, right? There's a lot of like wasted movement. He's bouncing around a lot. It's like he's like anxious, got to get in there, bouncing around, super nervous, got to finish the fight. And that's the thing with one thing with Alexander Hernandez. His combinations look good early, but the longer the fight goes, he'll start relying on just one shot at a time, or he'll start relying on grappling more. Like it's as if he's got a set amount of combinations, and once he's thrown that set amount of combinations, he's just like runs out of stuff. He's not super creative with his striking yet. The wrestling is good, but is it elite level? Is he going to win fights just out grappling guys? Like who the hell knows? But it's the move to Factory X. It's the recognizing I need to do something. And by his own account, he packs up his car, all of his worldly possessions, drives himself from Texas all the way to Colorado, shows up at the gym, and he's just like, I just want to work and I want to get better and I want to go for it. And so seeing him at all these UFC events, cornering guys, being backstage, that's all good for him. Why? Because you soak up the atmosphere. It's experience, right? Yeah. You're becoming more of a veteran in the game. Now you're getting in the cage, you're cornering a guy, you're giving him advice, you're analyzing stuff, you're seeing stuff, you're feeling the atmosphere, you're going in the gym, you're drilling hard with these guys day in and day out. Now you go to the UFC, and even though the Chris Kreutzmacher fight wasn't very long, it just looked like he was a lot more relaxed. It looked like he was a lot more at peace. Now he's got the monkey off his back because he gets the win. That confidence is coming back to him. The skills are all there. Going to Factory X, I think, was going to be really big for him and just, you know, helping him build his career along. And it's not to say that his opponent doesn't have a chance with Thiago Moises. Thiago Moises is a tough guy, right? Yeah. But again, where does he win this fight? You said it yourself. Where does he win this fight? His wrestling is not good enough to take down Alexander Hernandez. His striking is okay. It's not good enough to strike for 15 minutes against Alexander Hernandez, but he is super durable. And seeing the shots that he took against Michael Johnson in the first round, I'm not worried about this guy's chin, man. Like, he took some flush shots clean across the lips and comes back in the second round and gets the finish. He seems like one of these guys that's going to fight through. He does have good cardio. He's still young himself. He is making those improvements. But I'm not ready to write off Alexander Hernandez based on the guy's got a shitty character. Like a loss to Drew Dober, it's no big deal, buddy. Don't worry about it.
Especially in that fashion, right?
Yeah, a loss to Donald Cerrone, it's like, dude, no big deal. I get it. You know, you're 2 fights into your UFC career taking on this guy in a huge spot like that. Like, again, it's understandable. He needs the fights like the Thiago Moises of the world. Oh, even the Trinaldo fight, which is like, oh, dude, arguably that he lost that fight. It's like, it's just Trinaldo. Like, you're coming off a loss in devastating fashion, okay? You're clearly a little bit green and need some time to work on your game. And they give you another 20-fight UFC veteran who's like, been there, done that, has skills everywhere. Like, they've done him no favors. Now he's building back, but I think that this is the right way to do it. I'm going to take Alexander Hernandez. I do like that Alexander Hernandez by decision, plus 125. Again, does he go out there and knock out Thiago Moises? I don't think he's searching for those early finishes anymore. Yeah. I think like he gets more comfortable, like he gets more experience, he might approach it the way he did at the Aubin-Mercier fight. You know, even the Drew Dober fight, he did score 3 takedowns. If he goes back to the takedown game, stays out of the submissions, obviously, but that's going to chalk him up some points on the scorecards. The striking, he's going to have an advantage, but I think Moises' chin's good enough that he's, you know, going to survive that onslaught that Hernandez puts on him. And the flip side to that, I don't know that Thiago Moises catches him with anything. So I think the fight goes the distance. More so than that, I got Hernandez. I'm going to take Hernandez by decision, plus 125.
Glad we're on the same page there as well too. I've been racking my brain as to what people are singing in Thiago Moises, but again, it comes down to them. I think putting a little bit too much stock into Hernandez's cardio issues, and hopefully we can go a full 15 minutes this weekend and kind of shore those misconceptions up. All right. We got the first fight on the main card here. It's a 5-fight main card at first that we've had in a long time now. First fight up is Alex Caceres versus Kevin Croom. We got minus 210 on Bruce Leroy and then plus 175 on Kevin Croom. And Kevin Croom seems to be the public dog this week, and I kind of get why. I'm on it myself. I took a little bit of a shot at plus 175. I like what he brings to the cage. And it's not just, you know, him going out there and starching Roosevelt Roberts. You got to dig deeper and see what there is to like about Kevin Croom. And you're talking about a guy that has over 30-something fights now. The guy's a veteran of the game. He's been around the regional scene. He's fought a couple decent names on the regional scene as well. But not to mention his last fight before coming to the UFC was against a guy named Anderson Hutchinson, who I believe is, you know, one of those guys that might just stay a regional guy, but is a good test out for guys that go out there and compete against him. And he showed a really good plan against him over 5 rounds. It went a solid 5, keeping his pressure the same the entire time, not really letting Anderson Hutchinson breathe, keeping the momentum, keeping the pressure, moving forward at all times. And I think that's what he's going to be doing here against Alex Caceres. And to be honest, that's what Caceres really needs, is kind of the kryptonite to Caceres, right? He needs that space. He needs that comfortable room, that kicking zone where he can really get his game going, and obviously starting off with his kicks. Whereas Croom, I think, is just not going to let him breathe. I think he's just going to stay in his face. He's going to continue to push up against him, whether it's in the clinch, maybe take him down. But I think it's just a relentless pace and pressure from Kevin Croom that's very impressive from him, that we've seen on the regional scene time and time again. Like, it's not just one fight where we see him go out there and do this. He does it time and time again, and I think that's a reliable fighting style to bring into the cage, especially against a guy like Caceres, who I said needs that space to really operate at his optimal form. I think there might be a little extra love here on the recency bias for Alex Caceres because he's on a 3-fight winning streak, right? And he's looked dominant in those 3 fights as well. The Austin Springer fight gets him out of there relatively quickly. The Chase Hooper fight pulls off the upset. But again, Chase Hooper, we know he's kind of a one-trick pony at this point in time. Needs to get the fight to the ground, needs to pull off that submission. Even when they were on the ground, he just wasn't even close to locking up a submission on Caceres there. But Croom just brings a totally different game, right? A James Krause guy, a Glory MMA and fitness guy that, you know, if anything that we've learned about James Krause over the last couple of weeks, especially that Derek Minner fight, is he can change people's styles and really make them effective when they step into the cage. And I think that's what he's doing with Croom here. And I think they see the obvious path to victory, which is just crowd Alex Caceres, work some of that Muay Thai clinch. She has beautiful knees in that clinch as well too, but that pace and pressure is going to be a little bit too much for Caceres. And I think we're getting some solid dog value on Croom here. And I think I'll give Caceres a little love here in terms of thinking that he's durable. So I'll go with Croom, and I think that decision line, which is absolutely out of whack in my opinion, at plus 580 is crazy. Even him to win inside the distance, right? Like, Croom by KO is plus 750. Croom by sub is plus 440. So based on the odds, they think his most likely outcome is to win this fight by decision. But I think it's the decision. I think he just stays on him, doesn't let him breathe, and takes this fight the full 15 minutes and wins by decision. Plus 580 is a crazy line. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the same thing. Like, well, I don't want to fall into this trap of like, oh, it's the dog of the week. Like, everybody's on the same page. It's Kevin Croom. I keep hearing about it. Oh, that's a nice looking price tag, and yet the price has not moved. Like, it seems to be settled in right now. Maybe we'll see some more money come in closer to fight time. Maybe we'll see something at weigh-ins. But there's a lot to like out of Kevin Croom. First of all, he's one of these guys that comes to the UFC with just a wealth of experience already. Like, he is 33 years old, but this guy's a fighter, man. He's got over 30 pro fights. He's won titles. He's gone 5 rounds. He's fought a lot of UFC veterans. He's lost to a lot of UFC veterans, but at least he's been in there and he's soaked up the action. And then comes into the UFC, big underdog against Roosevelt Roberts, and shows you that nasty submission game. And this guy, Croom, really mirrors, in my opinion, Darrick Minner. Okay, so both guys have just tons of finishes, and they've lost a lot of fights as well in which they've been finished. But they've always fought the top guys. They come to the UFC. They're not expected to be much, and both of them spring first-round guillotine finishes. They've actually fought each other, by the way. Kevin Croom beat Darrick Minner out. But they both scored the big first-round finish. Minner got the win over TJ Laramie. Croom got the win over Roosevelt Roberts. Croom, unfortunately, got his overturned to a no contest. But all the same, it's like you just see that savvy sub game. Good. But once Darrick Minner lost to Kevin Croom, Darrick Minner relocated to Glory MMA and Fitness, which is where Croom's at. And I think that's a huge narrative that I know some people are behind, but it does have to be recognized. What they're doing over there is incredible. James Krause is seemingly just taking a group of mid-level talent guys, journeyman guys that have 10 pro losses, guys that don't have tons of athleticism, and just puts these proper game plans together. Go in, good game plan, fight to the best of your abilities, not your opponent's abilities, and come through with the victory. Croom's strong. Croom's also strong that he used to fight at 155. In fact, dude's got a fight against Justin Gaethje. Yeah. Gaethje missed weight too, came in at 159, and Croom took the fight and got fucked up. But what I'm saying is that he actually fought at lightweight quite a few times, and does seem to be naturally bigger, stronger guy. When you think about Bruce Leroy used to fight at 135 pounds, right? He is definitely more of a featherweight. He's been fighting at featherweight for his last number of fights now. But what I'm saying is he's not really the most physically strong guy. So Croom could go out there and out-muscle him. And the same way that Darrick Minner, you guys know me, I sat here and told you why Charles Rosa was going to win. Fucking wrong on that one. But beyond that, who would have thought that Darrick Minner was going to win a decision, right?
Yeah.
Darrick Minner is just one of these submission guys. He goes out there, he's hell or high water. He puts pressure on you, and either he finishes you or he doesn't finish you, but he's not winning these decisions, right? The decision prop was just it was huge, but nobody really saw it. This Croom thing's the same way. It's oh, well, Croom's a finisher. And well, here's the thing. Bruce Leroy's he's fought in the UFC 25 times. He's a longtime veteran. He's fought a lot of guys. He does have some decent durability. Croom, meanwhile, he beat Roosevelt Roberts with the 32-second guillotine choke. But the 2 fights prior to that, he fought in Bellator, squeaked out a split decision. That doesn't look good. But the fight against Hutchison, as you mentioned, 5 round of pressure. Cardio looked good. Physically, you see any of the stuff that the guy's posting, looks in really good shape physically. I think he's going to be ready for this fight, ready to go in there, secure some takedowns, pressure this guy. Even striking, it's Leroy likes space. He likes to stay at range. He likes to use the kick game. He does like that low calf kick. But how you neutralize that is just pressure this guy forward. Kill that pocket. Kill that zone. Get in on it. A lot of guys have had a lot of success taking down Bruce Leroy just because he's not the most physically strong guy going there. I don't want Croom to overexert himself searching for a finish, searching for these takedowns, that he gets himself tired. But if he fights a smart game plan, and James Krause is putting together these excellent game plans right now, then yeah, he's most definitely a live dog. And that decision plus 580, I liked it. I liked it, man. It just seemed like a really big price. Yeah. And there's 2 ways of looking at props. You can look at what's the prop I like the most. This fight, I could guarantee this fight. What if I told you I could guarantee this fight is going to go over 1.5? Guarantee it 100%, but the line's minus 240. And this other one is I don't know if it could happen, but it's plus 600. Yeah. No, nobody wants to go after the 240. It's I'd rather just chase a couple of these. We talked about that Alexis Davis by decision. That's a nice looking plus money prop if you're looking for an underdog with a chance that could potentially hit. And I think the same thing here. I think Croom's live. I think Croom's live by decision. And again, it's a nice little plus money, nice nice big plus money play.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm in on that.
Getting close to 6-1 odds on a decision prop. That seems quite live, before stepping into the cage. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm glad that we're both on the same page here. All right, let's move on to a fight that I'm very, very excited for. It dropped off the UFC 258 card a couple weeks ago, but we got Pedro Munhoz versus Jimmy Rivera. They fight for the second time now. The first time around, they fought several years ago where Jimmy Rivera pulled off a decision. Somewhat of a close fight, but still, you could decidedly say that Jimmy Rivera deserved that decision that night. But the fighters, they've had a ton of experience in that amount of time, but I still think that Jimmy Rivera comes out here with getting his hand raised. The guy's very good in terms of putting his strikes together. He has a solid wrestling background as well too, but he doesn't really lean on that. I've seen a couple breakdowns out there where people are like, oh, he's going to be able to blanket Pedro and just clinch fuck him or do something like that. I'm like, have you seen Jimmy Rivera fight as of late? That's not his style. Like, the only time he was really forced to clinch up and wrestle was the last fight against Cody Stamann, but that was because Cody Stamann was the one initiating that, and he was defending very well, reversing the position, doing some good damage of his own. But he makes his bread and butter off of that striking. That Tiger Showman camp is just so nasty with the striking. You got the Julio Arces and the Lyman Goods that are coming out of that camp, and I think that Jimmy Rivera is one of the best, if not the best, coming out of that gym. His striking just looks so on point pretty much every time, right? Goes out there, moves in and out very well, pivots after his combinations, really doesn't take a crazy amount of damage. And I think that, speaking of damage, I think that a lot of people are just reading too much into that Marlon Moraes fight, or where he just got starched within that first couple seconds of that fight. I think that's a bit of an anomaly, right? Like, it reminds me of the Ricky Simone and Uriah Faber thing, because now we're seeing Simone go out there and eating some solid shots from Brian Kelleher, eating some solid shots from that other UFC newcomer, and his chin looks fine. Like, he's not getting rocked, he's not getting dropped or anything like that. And up until this point, but with Jimmy Rivera, he got dropped twice by Petr Yan. You're going to tell me that Petr Yan has the same type of striking as Pedro Munhoz? I'm going to tell you to get the hell off the stream and never come back again. Because Pedro Munhoz, more slow, just trudging forward, trying to kind of take your head off, throws a calf kick here and there, but it's not like anything super technical that's going to, out strike a guy like Jimmy Rivera. So I think the narrative of Jimmy's chin being gone is just overblown. I think Jimmy Rivera is going to go out there and absolutely outstrike Pedro Munhoz here. And stylistically, I think it's a great matchup. Pedro doesn't pursue takedowns. He's not a great wrestler. Obviously, he has a great jiu-jitsu game, but even if he tries to attack this from the wrestling game, he's not going to out-grapple a guy like Jimmy Rivera, who spends very minimal amount of time on the ground. Aljamain Sterling had a very hard time of getting him there, even though he pulled off the victory in that fight. But Jimmy Rivera is just such a solid, efficient fighter, a guy that you can more often than not bank on to go out there and win a decision, right? The only finish he has in the UFC, I believe, is over Marcus Brimage, but Brimage has just had a very tough time in the UFC. I think that was like sandwiched between him fighting Cody Garbrandt and Conor McGregor. So he just got a real rough run of things at that time. And then top it off, you got Jimmy Rivera that you have to go up against. So I'm on the Rivera side, obviously, as you can see here. Does Pedro Munhoz clip him and finish him? I'm not 100% sure. This is the last thing I'll say about this. For some reason, after the Cody Garbrandt fight, everybody thinks that Pedro Munhoz is like Francis Ngannou of 135 pounds, right? His only finishes before that, Matt Hobart, way back in 2014. What the fuck is Matt Hobart doing nowadays? Rocks and drops Brian Caraway to the body and then follows up a punches. So not a one-punch knockout or anything like that. And then, yeah, he had Rob Font on a little bit of wobbly legs, forcing him to shoot in on a takedown and gets guillotine choked there. But he's supposed to go out there and dust Frankie Edgar. That didn't happen. Say what you want about the decision, but everybody was banking on the inside the distance there, thinking that Pedro was going to take off Frankie's head. He was not able to do so there. So I think this fight will help people bring that narrative back down, start to reel themselves in. That Pedro Munhoz is a decent striker, but he's not this crazy knockout artist that people are making him out to be. So yeah, I like Jimmy here. I like him by decision. I liked him by decision like when they were first lined up, when we got like plus 130-ish. Now it's at like evens, I think minus 100, plus 100. Still a solid spot. That's pretty much how Jimmy wins. I don't think he finishes Pedro. So I'm on the Jimmy side, by decision, plus 100. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, I honestly say the same. I see the same thing. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to go to the distance, but I think that the judges are ultimately going to side with Jimmy Rivera. It kind of reminds me, not the same style, but it reminds me of Beneil Dariush versus Carlos Diego Ferreira a few fights back. It's like it was a rematch. They hadn't fought in years, but both guys were the same fighter they were. They had the same skill set. It's still going to play out the same. Beneil's path is still with the takedowns in the top game. That is how he's going to get the points. You know, they're both better strikers. They're both more experienced guys, but the same path of victory still exists. The last time you see them, taking down Jimmy Rivera is a no bueno. Like how are you going to go out there and get this guy down? He's so short. He's so like just powerfully built, low center of gravity that, Aljamain Sterling goes 0 for 7 in takedowns against you. Yeah, you're going to be quite fine in a lot of spots. And that's not the way to take this guy down. Well, now you got to strike with him. Well, you're going to outstrike him. Pedro wasn't able to do it last time out. And even though Pedro's made a ton of improvements to his striking, you just get the sense that if this is going to be 15-minute striking affair, you got to go with Jimmy Rivera. Pedro Munhoz has got a non-existent reach, and neither does Jimmy Rivera for that matter. But you've seen Pedro make all these improvements to his striking game, largely on his kicks. So he's got a 65-inch reach. Jimmy Rivera's got a 68-inch reach. Jimmy doesn't really got much of a reach advantage over most guys. But with Pedro, he's just got such these short arms. He's just got heavy on the kick game. So, like you said, people love talking about the Cody Garbrandt fight. I myself loved it as well because I had him winning that spot. But A, he doesn't look good in the early going in that fight. He's clearly beat to the punch. But B, what sets up that KO? Cody Garbrandt deciding to go out on his shield like an idiot. Well, why does he decide to go out on shield like an idiot? Because his legs just absolutely mangled. The leg kick game works extremely well. And you see Pedro go back to that. So now against Jimmy, it's like, you want to play kicky with Jimmy Rivera? Like, you're not just going to exchange kicks with this guy at distance for 15 minutes and win the fight. I think Jimmy's just going to be able to win that game. As far as the boxing goes, maybe slight advantage Jimmy. Jimmy wins when he wins fights. Like you said, decision. There's no way he submits Pedro Munhoz. No. I don't see him knocking out Pedro Munhoz. So this should be another classic Jimmy Rivera decision win if he is going to win. But to play one devil's advocate to that point, as you mentioned, where's Pedro's best path? Maybe not just snatching up the neck. People love to talk about his jiu-jitsu, great guillotine choke. Maybe that's not it. Maybe it's not just clipping Jimmy. The one thing I will admit with Pedro is now he just goes balls to the walls. He goes hard, right? He's got a lot of volume. He'll go out there and just be super aggressive. He's not worried about you taking him down. He's not worried about giving up a takedown. And he's got really good cardio. So when you look at his last number of fights now, right, he's landing just like at a really high clip. And that's something Jimmy Rivera never does. So his last fight with Frankie, it's 5 rounds, but he lands 166 significant strikes. It's 166 to 135 for Pedro and somehow loses a split. You tell me. Regardless, it's like, damn, this guy's just throwing caution to the wind out there. With the Aljamain Sterling fight, he landed 105 significant strikes over Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling's super elusive. One of the most defensive savvy guys in the division. You land 105 significant strikes over 3 rounds against this guy. The Garbrandt fight lasts 1 round. He hits him 25 times. The Brian Caraway fight, 1 round. He landed 35 significant strikes to get the finish in the first round. The Brett Johns fight, and this is all in a row. I'm not just picking and choosing. This is his last number of fights. The Brett Johns fight, 117 significant strikes. And he dropped him 3 times with the leg kicks. Johns' leg was just chewed up. So we're seeing routinely out of Pedro, 100 plus, lots of volume going out there. That same breath with Jimmy Rivera, Cody Stamann, 15 minutes, he landed 48. Peter Yan, 15 minutes, he landed 73, which is super fucking impressive, by the way. The Aljamain Sterling fight, he landed 24. When Pedro Munhoz fought Aljamain, he landed 105. When Jimmy couldn't track him, lands 24. Him versus John Dodson, 62. Him versus Thomas Almeida, 70. Him versus Faber, 54. He's never landed 80 significant strikes in his UFC career. Or I guess he has way back when, I guess. Sorry, that's a lie. He has 1 time in his entire career. And you know who it was? The first time against Pedro Munhoz. so that's what I'm banking on. It's the same fight it was the last time. Keep this fight standing. Be the better striker. But again, if I'm gonna place that little seed of doubt for why we're not going 100% all board on it, it's like Pedro could simply just outwork him, not get a finish, but just outwork him. So I do see whoever winning this fight, I see them winning by decision. I do think Pedro's live in that breath, and Pedro by decision's plus 310. So Jimmy by decision's even money. Okay, I like it, and I'm gonna bet it. I will let you guys know I'm gonna bet it. The Pedro side does seem like the value side here. So, I don't want to talk myself out of the bet because, again, I
sounds like you're doing that.
I know. Well, but all I said to start that argument was I'm just going to play devil's advocate quick. And then listening to those points, does it not make you now think as well, like, fuck, he's kind of right a little bit. Jimmy's low output and Pedro might just go out there and just outwork him. Like, does that not sound like a plausible path for him? So, I don't want to think about it too much because that's what causes you to back out. But I also don't want to go all in on Jimmy Rivera and then sit here next week and look at you and be like, the apple pie shitter of the week, Jimmy Rivera, man. I thought he'd do more. It's like, no. You sat here and explained why you didn't think he'd do more. So why did you still pick him? Because I honestly think striker versus striker, Pedro's not beating Jimmy Rivera, and that's what this fight is going to play out to. So no matter, even if he does have the volume, you've seen him get screwed versus Frankie. He had the volume against Frankie. Yeah. It's just like, who's landing the eye-appealing shots? Who's got the little bit of more, like, I don't know. I just think Jimmy squeaks it. By the way, the last time they fought was a split. And if this time's a split as well, then so be it. But yeah. It's going to be a close fight, but I'm going to take Jimmy Rivera because I think it's going to go the decision. It'll be Jimmy Rivera by decision, even money.
Two more things I'll just say about this matchup. The thing about Pedro Munhoz and his striking style is he has that like fuck it striking style that jiu-jitsu guys have. Like it reminds me of Hani Yahya, where he's just like, I don't care that I'm throwing these looping shots and trying to take your head off because I want you to try to shoot on me so I can throw on this guillotine or at least get my jiu-jitsu game going. That's kind of Pedro Munhoz's approach, it seems like. So he doesn't mind putting himself out there. And then Jimmy Rivera, on the other hand, I mean, he just makes that striking just look a little bit more crisp, does a little bit more of the damaging shots, even though he doesn't have the volume. And not to mention that Petr Yan fight, outside of him getting dropped twice at the ending of that first and second round, he's winning that fight, which is insane, right? Yeah. Which is absolutely insane. I think he's still very competitive, and I could absolutely see him in a title shot within the next year and a half if he keeps racking up some of these W's. I think he's still very high level. But yeah, this is a good test for him in terms of, one, if he has chin issues, this is definitely one that he'll get his chin checked. But two, just to see if he's still crisp and sharp with his hands, just as we've seen in his last several fights. So yeah, I'm glad that we both like Jimmy here. Not to the point of actually you talking me out of him, but good points brought up nonetheless. We definitely need to give our viewers both sides of the coin here. All right, let's keep things moving along. Next up, we got Montana De La Rosa versus Mayra Bueno Silva. We got minus 140 on Bueno Silva and plus 120 on De La Rosa. De La Rosa seems like another popular dog this week, right? And it's obvious. You got a solid striker with a decent jiu-jitsu with Mayra Bueno Silva, and then you got an improving striker in Montana, but with obviously a very solid wrestling background. And that's where I think this fight is going to be played out. It's going to be Montana getting those takedowns and doing some good work from on top against Bueno Silva. But then when you put yourself into like a trap like that, like Bueno Silva has the majority of her wins by submission, and she looks quite good off of her back at times when she's able to pull off those submissions. But then you see the Marina Moroz fight, right, where she's just not really showing the best account of herself off of her back. You see Moroz kind of just grinding her out in those situations. She gives away the third round. That's where we see Bueno Silva really start to turn it on, get her striking going. But I don't mind what we've seen from De La Rosa as of late, right? Like you could almost compare this to the Viviane Araujo fight, but I think that Araujo is just much, much better than Bueno Silva. She just moves a lot better. I think, I don't know about cardio, but in terms of striking, I think she's just much better in terms of moving in and out. Very fast twitch muscle type of fighter compared to Silva, who seems just a little bit, I don't want to call her slow, but a little bit more plodding than Viviane, which should allow the takedowns of De La Rosa to kind of come to fruition here. I think she'll be able to get the takedowns. I think she'll be able to do some solid top control, and then mix into the fact that she's up there at Team Elevation as well. Again, getting good training partners, good looks, good coaching. This is a solid change for a woman that's still relatively young, has had a wealth of experience in the UFC at this point in time, not to mention her time over there on The Ultimate Fighter. But I think that this is a solid spot for De La Rosa to kind of grind out and get a quintessential Montana De La Rosa type of performance. And I don't think she subs her. I don't think she TKOs her, but I think she wins this fight pretty handily by decision. And that line's currently at plus 175. My only qualm is if she potentially gets snatched up in a sub, and I kind of put that on the lower side of things. But it's been the calling card for Bueno Silva, right? It's bailed her out in several fights now against like Jillian Robertson, and last time out against, I believe it was the last time or the fight before that against Mara Romero Barella, where she's able to pull these submissions off her back. The only time De La Rosa has been subbed, Mackenzie Dern. So you can't really be too mad at that, right? Is Bueno Silva Mackenzie Dern level? We won't know, but she's still pretty persistent with throwing up submissions when she's in that full guard. So it's going to be important for De La Rosa to pass that, get to half guard, get to side control, whatever it is, but just don't play in the guard too long because you're going to get caught. But I don't mind the dog value here. And if you're going to give me plus 175 on the decision as well, personally, I'd like a little bit better of a line there, but that's definitely her path to victory, as I don't see her finishing Bueno Silva here. You feel the same way? You like De La Rosa as well?
Yeah, so not only is the path, get that submission over De La Rosa, and you mentioned like who did it, Mackenzie Dern. Why don't you go and tell the viewers how Mackenzie Dern submitted her?
I wish I could pull that up.
It's a rear naked choke omoplata, and it's actually one of Mackenzie Dern's go-to moves, right?
Yeah.
Where she always used to set up in gi jiu-jitsu, work her way up, but it's like the nastiest move. It's like, okay, understandable that you got caught in that. But beyond that, it's like, yeah, her submission defense, it checks out. And one thing I like about Montana De La Rosa, young, but just wants to improve and super eager and goes out there. And you do see that she's a really hardworking girl. I mean, she is a mother. She is married to a UFC veteran, Mark De La Rosa, who didn't have a great run in the UFC himself, but BJJ veteran. Both of them putting a lot of work in training, but just training at elevation and putting herself in the best path. She has a wrestling base that when she was coming into the UFC off the Ultimate Fighter, that was kind of her go-to, was like, okay, she can wrestle a little bit, but it's just not super high level. But now recently you see, she's using it a little bit more. The striking, oh man, not very good at all. Super labored, herky-jerky, sets up the same combinations, kind of flat-footed. And then now you see, wow, just making improvements. Is she a great striker yet, though? No. In her grappling, same thing. She's definitely making these improvements. She's still young. She is putting herself in a good position. It's just a matter of, does she get caught in some fluky armbar from guard from in a fight that she should probably win? I compare this to like a Polyana Viana fight. It's like she's gonna get taken down, right? It just depends. Like, is she gonna throw up an armbar and catch you in it, or are you gonna get out of it and beat her at some point with maybe a submission of your own? I'm not 100%. Montana De La Rosa's last time out against Vivi, as you mentioned, Vivi is very, very Vivi. I can honestly say could compete with almost anybody in the division for 5 minutes, and she can compete. I would say anybody in the division with 5 minutes, and she can compete with almost everybody in the division for 10 minutes, and she can compete with most of the division for 50. Like, it falls off rapidly. Yeah. But Montana's just working her. Like, the first 2 rounds, she takes a beating. Her leg's chewed up. Her face is busted up. She's bleeding. She's breathing hard. And she just keeps pushing. She just keeps pushing. Now, eventually, when Vivi's tired in that 3rd round, which she tends to do, Montana's able to just persevere and put her in some bad spots, probably win that 3rd round just on the basis of that grind. I like that. I like that she's got that heart of the fighter. And again, she's still young enough that she can go back to the drawing board, see where she made the mistakes, see where she makes improvements, and go back out there and do the same thing. And it's honestly no disrespect at all to Mayra Bueno Silva. Again, I can see her snatching up one of those arm bars from guard. I can see her using that shoot to box background, stand up to land those hard, heavy leg kicks and slow this girl down and bust her face up. And maybe she does go out there and win. And this is another spot where a lot of people are talking the same way. Oh, Montana De La Rosa. She opened out plus 125. She dropped to 100. And now she's back at plus 125. So as much as there's confidence in her as a live underdog, the money's not necessarily reflecting that just yet. But again, the last thing that with Silva is that she tends to give up those takedowns, right? She did get taken down against Marina Moroz, a Ukrainian boxer, twice. She gave up the takedown to Jillian Robertson. She gave up the takedown to Mara Romero Barella. Could she throw up that armbar? Yeah, we've seen her do it. We could absolutely see her, but she's going to have to be doing that off of her back, meaning she'll give up those takedowns. Montana, decent takedowns. We're both agreeing she's probably going to score takedowns. Now the question is, does the armbar happen? Does the submission off her back happen? Well, if you're of the train of thought, which we just discussed, Montana's got some decent takedown defense. And her cardio is good enough that if she evades the first couple attacks, she'll just keep putting pressure on you. Whereas you can see Silva tiring from just like, shit, I threw up a couple good attempts and burnt some energy out. So down the stretch, good cardio, elevation, all those things make Montana De La Rosa a live underdog. I agree with you. I like that Montana bites decision, which is the good plus money prop here. But like women's MMA has got a way of getting me. And with Polyana Viana, I bet against her last time. And it's the same shit. It hit the ground like I knew it was going to. Like most people probably knew. And then right away it hits the ground and she's just like, I was like, you son of a bitch, Mallory Martin.
Almost on cue.
Like right away. And that's what I'm expecting here. I think Montana De La Rosa is going to strike with her for a little bit, but eventually that leg kick probably is going to hurt a little bit. Eventually counter right hand is going to sting her a little bit. And eventually at some point, I think she's going to say, I'm going to mix in my wrestling, shoot that takedown, get this fight to the ground. And when she does, she needs to evade the submission. If she can, underdog play, underdog win, we're all happy about it. If she's not able to, we've seen her lose fights before in a lot of ways. She is still green. She's still got some learning to do. But as far as an underdog in a card that looks like there's a couple nice looking dogs on this card, I think De La Rosa is one of them.
Yeah, I'm absolutely right there with you. I love the spot for De La Rosa and think she could absolutely take advantage of the poor takedown defense that we see from Bueno Silva. All right, let's get to the co-main event. This one I'm really, really excited for as we got my guy Magomed Ankalaev finally trying to stay busy going up against Nikita Krylov. Obviously, he's a big favorite here, minus 350. Come back on Krylov at plus 290. I'm a Magomed Ankalaev stan. I'm gonna try to do this breakdown without being as biased as hell, but the guy just looks so good in the cage, right? The only knock you can really give this guy is that 1 second slip up against Paul Craig, and then the level of competition. But he doesn't have any control over that, right? Like the strength of schedule is something that a lot of people are knocking him on here and saying that Krylov is a huge step up. And in part, I do agree that it's a step up. I'm not sure if it's a huge step up. Krylov leaves himself out there to be taken advantage of more often than not. Very wild in his exchanges when he's trying to close the distance. Are we going to get Nicky wrestles this time around, like he fought freaking Johnny Walker? Putting on that singlet and taking him down time and time again. I think he accrued over 11 minutes of control time in that fight. I highly doubt that. I don't think he's going to be able to control a guy like Ankalaev on the ground for that long. Maybe he might be successful in getting a takedown or two, right? Craig was successful in getting him down twice, but he did work his way right back to his feet immediately, not really letting Craig get much damage or submission attempts off at that point. And I find it hard to believe that Krylov will be able to do the same here. The one thing that I love about Ankalaev's striking game is just his fluidity when it comes to like switching stances, because he'll come out in every single fight the opposite stance of his opponent at all times. Whether it's Klitz and Abreu with the southpaw stance, he'll come out with an orthodox. Whether it's his other fight, Stalcher Lungiambula comes out orthodox, this guy comes out southpaw. And he throws the exact same combinations with the same amount of comfortability from both stances. And I love it because you just don't know what you're going to be getting hit with against this guy. Now, he has a 63 or 68% striking defense rate, which leads you to believe that he's a very efficient striker, waits for his moments to really explode. And that might be a detriment to him for possible volume reasons and output reasons if he goes up there and, fights Krylov, who is kind of high output at times. But I just think it makes up for itself because when he is landing, he's landing the more damaging blows, the more obvious damaging blows. And optically, it just looks way more better for Ankalaev to go out there and land these precision strikes and not get hit as much and maybe not throwing as much, but still landing the better shots here. I think he's obviously the better technical striker here. Krylov, his only advantage, in my opinion, is his experience. The fact that he's been in there with so many different guys. The guy's like 28 years old and has like 30-something fights, which is crazy because I think he went pro when he was 18 or 19 and then just banged out a fight like every single month until he finally made it to the UFC. And I think Ankalaev wins this fight. I think he hasn't beat pretty much everywhere, but I think it's going to come down to the recklessness of Krylov, which is going to get him put out early in this fight. Earlier in the week, I was thinking maybe we'd see Ankalaev just outpoint him, stay on the outside, but it's going to come down to Krylov. Krylov just doesn't fight, strategically as much. Yeah, okay, in the Johnny Walker fight, he was able to take advantage of the poorest takedown defense and the poor grappling of Johnny Walker, but he's not going to have that advantage here. Like, he might have the advantage in terms of getting the fight to the ground, but I don't think it's going to be such an advantage to the point that it looks like the Johnny Walker fight. I'd be very, very surprised if we see that off of Magomed's back. But Ankalaev has just been looking great as of late. If you check out his IG, he's been working with Javier Hernandez as of late as well too, working with those AKA guys, Usman Nurmagomedov, and a lot of that crew over there. So he's really rounding out his game. I think this guy is truly a future 205-pound champion. He's going to be holding that strap by the end of 2022, in my opinion. And I think he puts out Krylov early here. So I'll go Krylov first round KO plus 225 for him to win inside round one. That's a spot that I like. For him to win by KO, I think is like minus 105, minus 125. So you can cover at least the wider range of this fight. But yeah, I like Ankalaev and I like him early here. How about you?
I'm a big Ankalaev fan. Absolutely. I think he's got skills everywhere. And I think that Paul Craig fight is the only reason why a lot of people are still hesitant on him. Like, whether it's Paul Craig, whether it's losing a fight with a second left, whether it's a triangle that comes out of, like you just see it happen in slow motion it's like, no, don't do this. No, don't. Oh, 1 second left. Like, surely they're yelling to him, like, just hold on. Like, was it a heart issue? Was it this? But beyond that, man, it's like he's got skills everywhere. Like, he would otherwise be undefeated. I mean, and he does not lose rounds. He doesn't really lose exchanges. He's having his way with these guys. He kind of can do it all. He's got good cardio, especially for 205. He pushes a good pace. He's fluid. He's mobile. He's got good footwork. I wouldn't say like great footwork, but good and mobile, especially at 205. And that's something Krylov's gotten away with as well, is that he's super fast and mobile for this division as well. Take that, neutralize it off the table. Ankalaev's equally as fast. His striking is good. You see it was a work in progress before, but he's got big power. He's got a nasty head kick. He's got these big hooks. You see him in both fights against Ion Cutelaba, where it's like, if he chooses to be reckless and let these hands go, he's got a ton of power. His submission game, not bad as well, but he just grinds you down. He's in no hurry to finish these fights. If the fights happen to get finished, that's great. He'll take it. But he doesn't mind going out there and putting in a workman's 15 minutes in. So beyond him having to do that, I like this over 1.5 round.
Yeah.
Now the over 1.5 round is sitting at -150. It's a like okay little price tag. But when you look at Krylov, right? Krylov's last fight with Johnny Walker, full decision fight. He decides to grapple a lot more in that fight. The fight with Glover Teixeira, it's full 15-minute fight, goes to decision. The fight with OSP, it was actually 2:30 of the second round, like literally on the dot. You would have got a push on the over under 1.5 round. The Jan Blachowicz fight, it was the over 1.5 round. The Fabio Maldonado fight, it was the over 1.5 round. So you're looking at 5 straight fights out of Nikita Krylov, who's a very potent finisher. He's the guy that's going out there and finishing these guys early in the first round, getting a lot of these finishes. His last 5 fights have hit that over 1.5. And with Magomed and Ankalaev, he's been taking out Ion Cutelaba. He's able to finish him. But for the most part, he doesn't mind going and fighting that Klitsin Abreu type fight where it's like, I'll outstrike you when I need to. I'll out-grapple you when I need to. If I got you hurt, I don't have to overexert myself, but just try to bank in a little bit of time. If the finish presents itself later in the fight, it is what it is. But that over 1.5, -150, I don't mind that. Ankalaev straight up, if you were to look at money line, which is something we'll talk about, you and I can talk about tomorrow night. But yeah, it's a big price tag. So you want to chase a prop on this fight, if anything. And what feels the best, right? Do you go with Ankalaev? I like Ankalaev by decision, +225. But then it's like, oh man, these are two guys that go out there. Yeah, like this is Nikita Krylov A. I know his last 2 fights have gone the distance, but this is Krylov A, and this is Ankalaev, who does have that Paul Craig loss. He does have these knockout wins over Cutelaba, especially big knockout wins over Cutelaba. That second one, first one, obviously, we all know what happened there. But it's like, oh man, this guy, if this guy chooses to go out there and chase a $50,000 bonus, like this fight ain't going the distance. And with Krylov, it's like, if he knows his best path to victory is catch this guy early, this fight ain't going the distance. So is 225 a good enough price tag there? Maybe not. Okay, well, let's go Ankalaev inside the distance. Again, I didn't feel like that was a prop I really liked, but that over 1.5. Now, do we get greasy and chase the over 2.5, or chase just fight goes the distance? I don't know, but 1.5 is only -150. Don't get greedy. That seemed like the play I like, and hopefully we don't have. Actually, if it's Chris Tognoni, hammer that 1.5. Okay, he'll let the guy die before he steps in there, so that would be a good play. But beyond that, I think they bank up a little bit of time. I think they grind a little bit. Krylov's last fight against Johnny Walker is super telling. Johnny Walker is a guy that can strike, right? Is a dynamic striker, but is chinny. Corey Anderson knocked him out. You've seen him get wobbled. You've seen him just like, there's something that is left to be desired. I honestly, when I broke down that fight, I was like, I got Krylov, live underdog, +175, I think, +145, live underdog. I think he's going to go out there and outstrike him. I think he's going to, and he wanted nothing to do with the strike. He just decided to wrestle, decided to grapple, decided to slow the pace down. That's not on the table here. You're not going to go out there and to take down Ankalaev and slow him down and use that as a path to victory. But the fact that he was willing to try it, makes me like that over 1.5. Go out there and try to grapple him. Okay, all it's going to do is kill some time off the clock. And if you stay at distance, that's where it's the most dangerous. But Ankalaev's chin checks out. He's got a good chin. I've seen him get hit, pretty good. And with Krylov's been knocked out once in his entire career. He's got 35 pro fights. He's been fighting since he's 18 years old. He's been knocked out once in his entire career, okay? Late in the 3rd round of his UFC debut, on short notice, up against heavyweight Soa Pelele, who was easily 300 pounds come fight night. Yeah. And when you have a 300-pound Samoan on top of you, smashing your face in late in the 3rd round, there was just nowhere to go. Outside of that, the guy's chin's been remarkably good. So survive for the 7.5 minutes, baby. And -150, easily feels a lot better than betting Ankalaev 335.
Yeah. No, but I think my concern with that over is Krylov's approach, right? If he goes out there, tries to wrestle and isn't successful with it, his striking defense is really not the greatest. He really leaves himself open to be countered there. And I think Ankalaev will absolutely take full advantage of that. But it comes down to Krylov, right? Again, he's only been to a decision twice in his career, and it's only his last 2 fights where he was willing to be super engaged in that grappling realm against Glover Teixeira and Johnny Walker. Whereas Ankalaev, obviously has a clear advantage here on the feet. How he does in terms of stuffing takedowns is another question. Again, Paul Craig got him down twice. We did see him get right back to his feet, so that's a good thing. But we haven't seen him really tested in the takedowns since that fight. And I think that Krylov, if he is smart, if he has any type of fight IQ after 30-something fights, he's going to try to attack that takedown first and see if that's a path to victory for him there. But yeah, I do like Ankalaev. The spot that I'm going to go with is around 1 KO, though I don't mind that over 1.5 at all either. All right, let's move on to the main event here. If you guys want to check out the full episode, make sure you guys go to odds.com. It will be all there for you. But let's get into this main event between Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Ciryl Gane. We got a heavy chalk again on Ciryl Gane here at minus 265. Line seems to be coming down a little bit. And then we got plus 225 on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. A spot that jumps off to me right off the bat is the over 1.5 at minus 210. A little bit chalky at this point in time, but kind of gives me the same feel where we'll see these guys go out there and try to, gauge each other for a little bit. Gane moves very well on the feet as well, too. Very good in and out movement. I think he could kind of dodge the early strikes from Jairzinho here and take it over that 7.5 minute mark. But then it depends on what happens for the rest of the fight, right? Now, I think that we could potentially see Gane go out there and attack this from a grappling sense, or, just strike for a bit and then eventually attack the grappling, where I think he should have the advantage. He has a couple of submission victories on his record. The only thing we haven't really seen is how he looks off of his back, just because nobody's really pushed him to go to that spot yet. Is Jairzinho Rozenstruik going to push him in that spot? I highly doubt it. Our Rozenstruik obviously has the striking advantage here in terms of technical. Not to mention he fought over there in Glory, I believe, a couple times too, has a bunch of kickboxing experience on his record as well. So he should have gone beat there in the technical aspect. But in terms of the volume aspect, it leaves a lot to be desired, right? Gane is not like super high output, but does enough to go out there and just squeeze out these rounds, winning these, beating these guys by outpointing them, staying on the outside, jumping in and out, doing a good job in terms of rolling with shots too. JDS was able to hit him with a couple of good shots. Didn't really seem to phase Gane at all. Then again, I do believe that Rozenstruik is another level when it comes to power. We got like Francis Ngannou, we got Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and Derek Lewis. And I started this at the top of the show. I hope we see some normalcy here and Gane go out there and win a technical fight rather than that lower percentage knockout that I believe that we saw last weekend with Derek Lewis, and this weekend another potential with Jairzinho having that knockout power once again. The angle that I'm looking at is Gane wrestling a little bit later in this fight, getting this fight to the ground, possibly pulling off a submission, which is plus 450. I like that line. I wish it was a little bit better. I think it opened around plus 600. Now it's gone down to plus 450, but I think it has a little bit of value there. If this was a 3-round fight, I'd be looking at Gane by decision, as he doesn't have an extra 10 minutes to worry about having to stay away from the big power of Jairzinho. But now that we got this fight at 5 rounds, it leaves me a little bit more skeptical if we'll see Gane, fight that point fighting style for 5 rounds, and if he can even get away with it for 25 minutes, right? That's the issue that I have here. So I'm leaning the Gane side. I think he wins this fight via submission, takes this to the ground, and pulls something off there. But man, that power of Rozenstruik is nothing to fuck around with. How are you seeing this fight, and how much stock are you putting into that knockout possibility for Jairzinho here?
Yeah, it seems like it's Derek Lewis, number 4, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. This is power rankings. Number 3, Francis Ngannou. Number 2.
Oh, who's number 1?
Nico Price, man. That guy just he flicks you with a backhand from his back, half foot looking the other way without turning his hips, and these guys crumple. It's crazy. Yeah, some guys got a tremendous amount of power, and we see with these heavyweights. We saw it last week. Obviously, I was on Curtis Blades, minus 450 favorite. He's a big guy, but you have to realize it is a heavyweight fight. I mean, anything can happen. We always talk about in MMA, the punch could always land. Anybody can knock out anybody, but it's always going to be, just exponentially bigger at the heavyweight division. These guys are big guys. Some of them cut to 265 pounds. They're all large men. Rozenstruik hits you, you're in a lot of trouble. Rozenstruik doesn't throw a ton of volume, but here's the thing. If you're a heavyweight power puncher, you either throw 100 strikes like a Volkov, or you throw 10 or 15 like an Ngannou or Lewis, Yeah. You got that power. You don't have to go out there and throw a ton of combinations. You don't have to go there and throw a ton of output. And Gane is that guy. He's an output guy. I know that he does tire. You look at the Bozer fight, especially, it's 15 minutes. He does get slowed down a little bit in that fight. And you see him come to the UFC. He's got a lot of quick finishes. debuts with the UFC. Again, you see more quick finishes. That he looks good in. The Dante Mays fight goes 3 rounds, but it's Dante Mays gets the heel hook. His fight against Pessoa. Like, again, is he fighting at like the highest level? Like, no, not necessarily. Draws Bozer. And then the Junior Dos Santos fights, like, this guy looks completely very good. Very fluid, very accurate, making those improvements. And that's what I like about him, is that there's these wave of these new heavyweights, right? We seen it last week with Daukaus and Tom Aspinall. It's like they're sub 30-year-old guys who are starting to accrue some experience, have legitimate talent everywhere, and are coming and making that big splash. Cyrill's part of that. He's the TKO champion. You and I got to see him live before coming to the UFC, and it was like there's an aura around him. Like, oh, damn, he's one of Francis Ngannou's training partners. This guy's the real deal. He's no longer one of Francis Ngannou's training partners, but going out there and having a spar with Francis, what better guy to prepare you against this guy, where it's like, touch, go. Touch, go. You know what? When I touched, he countered after the first touch and I got hit. So now I'm just going to touch, go. Like, you change as a man, you make improvements, you make realizations. It's like, okay, that's all good stuff. I think that he will be good at playing, that distance game, that range game, that speed game early, right? Whether he does get caught later on in the fight, that's anybody's guess. Like you said, it feels better to bet him in a 3-round fight than a 5-round fight because there's not at least that extra 10 minutes. And as we've seen in the Overeem fight, it's like,
every second counts.
Yeah, every second counts. Because just like we would see against Derek Lewis, against Volkov or whoever, it's like it could be 1 second left on the clock. There could be, 1 second in on the clock. It's like if they hit you, the power carries all the way through. Rozenstruik is going to be dangerous, but Gagne's just got to bag some rounds and try to be safe. But beyond that, we don't have to make a clear pick on the main event. We'll save that for tomorrow. But the props that I do like on this fight is I like some of these overs. So the over 1.5, don't love that one as much, but it's 210. The over 2.5, minus 115. The over 3.5, plus 135. Maybe I don't stretch it to 4.5 if fight goes the distance. But with Rozenstruik, you look at the Junior Dos Santos fight, right? And even though the first round, by the numbers, he outstruck Junior Dos Santos, I watched it or rewatched it a few times, and it's like that's a very close round. But I didn't see the scorecards, and I never saw what the judges' scorecards were because it's a second round finish. So I went up and I checked out the play-by-play. Most media outlets are scoring the round for Junior Dos Santos because of that first round just doesn't do a whole lot. And the second round he catches them, and it's all over. The Overeem fight, he's super low output. Mind you, he gets taken down here and there as well. But he's really low output, just waiting for the shot. And then late in the 5th round, lands it and turns around and walks away. Like, man, the judges got you losing this fight. They got him down 3-1 on the cards, and he lands that shot late. And I think that's just like a theme that I've seen from him in a lot of his fights is that, again, when you have that power, you don't throw a ton. When you don't throw a ton, you wait a little bit long. Well, is waiting too long going to get him in trouble here? I don't know. When Francis fought him, Francis was just like, I'm just going to bum rush him out the gate. Yeah. When Overeem fought him, Overeem was taking him down. He was making Overeem look like a bona fide wrestler, which he's just not, right?
Yeah.
I think it was the Junior Albini fight. He gets taken down twice. It's like his takedown defense leaves something to be desired. He's a 30-time kickboxing veteran. All his MMA fights, he likes to land that death touch. He likes to strike at range, but his takedown defense leaves something to be desired. Does he have Derek Lewis? Fuck it, I'm getting back up jiu-jitsu? Like, I don't know. Can Gane go out there and just take this guy down and hold him down? Yeah, very good possibility. And I think Gane is smart enough to realize if I just strike with this guy, I may get caught at some point. And I think he'll just strike in pockets long enough to just try to get him up against the cage and try to take him down. And I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to go like big play on Gane, or not even big play, but just like confidently bet Gane. But what I do like instead of trying to make a money line pick on this fight is bag some overs. I think the over 1.5, not a great price tag, but the over 2.5 and the over 3.5, I think that it plays out for both of them. If Gane wins this fight, he's just going to look to slow the thing down, right? I don't think he's knocking out Rozenstruik standing. If he does have success with the ground game, does he submit Rozenstruik? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure with that. He took 3 rounds to take out Dante Mays, so maybe not. He's not going to jump on a submission to give up position. Yeah. He'll just hold it down. As far as his striking goes, he's not a big power puncher guy. He's more of the stand at the outside, nice, accurate, crisp technique, but not huge on the power. Rozenstruik, meanwhile, we know the guy's dangerous at all times. But again, he's one of these guys that takes his time and sets it up and then hits you, then puts that kill shot on you. So I'm hoping that regardless of who wins, this fight probably makes it to round 3 or 4, and that's where shit gets real and somebody gets put away. So hopefully hit a couple of those overs in the meantime. But this is a fun main event. I think I'd be a lot more confident in Gane if I didn't just see Curtis Blades get flatlined. And I can see it being like, this is classic heavyweights too. You could be like, dude, it was Derek Lewis, and it was like, dude, that punch would have knocked out everybody, and it would have. But it was like, it was a short little shot. That's MMA for you. It doesn't have to be that like long bomb that comes from 5 feet out from the hip. That's like, holy shit. Sometimes it's just like the one you don't see coming. It's a crazy sport. And with Gane, it's like he's dealing with straight up dynamite on his hands. But hit some overs. Hopefully he can take it in some deeper waters. And if he does take it in deeper waters and he's up on the scorecards, he could just evade and try to survive. Stuff that I'm sure he's done many times in the gym with one Francis Ngannou. So play that evasive game, outpoint him a little bit. If his cardio is on point, the improvements from the junior fight carry over. I thought he looked really good in that fight, to be honest. They carry over, keep getting better, keep making improvements. Same thing with Tom Aspinall, right? Tom Aspinall did not look all that good against Andrei Arlovski, really. He hurt him bad in the first round. He looked dynamite. And then around like the 3 or 4 minute mark, it's like, oh shit.
He was huffing a little bit.
I never been past 90 seconds in a pro MMA fight before. So he ends the round and it's just like, oh dude, the guy looks half dejected. And the third round starts and Arlovski's throwing some combos. The second round starts and Arlovski's throwing some combos. And I'm like, oh no, Tom. And like he just like falls onto a really good joke. So dope, badass, inside the distance prop hit. All that's all well and good, but it's like that was a really good moment for him because he had to go to the second round. And he had to do something. And now people will analyze Tom Aspinall's next fight and be like, dude, didn't look good against Arlovski. But it's like, he'll look better because he's got that experience. With Gane, dude got signed. He was TKO champion like 3 fights into his career, right? And so he's signed to the UFC. He fights contenders. He's signed to the UFC. He's like 5 fights into his career. Now he's fighting Junior Dos Santos. He's like in these big spots. He's now headlining a fight. He's still super green, man. But it's like you see why they're pushing him is like he's keeping with it. He's making improvements. He hasn't been out of his depth just yet. So is this the first time? Possible. Is this going to be an eye-opening experience? That's like, oh, Gane's not as good as we thought he was. Could be, but like I call this guy honorary Canadian because we've got really nobody else. Nobody else is late.
You fight in TKO, you're Canadian.
Right. But this guy, he's from France, right? So he's French. So that we got the French connection for sure. He started out his career in TKO where he was the champion. I'm giving him a pass like that. If you're gonna tell me Nordine Taleb, who is Canadian, which he's not, he's from France, right? He's in the same boat. Canada's a great country. We have a ton of immigrants. They're Canadian. This guy, maybe he's not a Canadian citizen. Yeah. He's the only thing we got. Yeah. So I do like Gane. All jokes aside, he's just got to play a smart game plan and mix in those takedowns. But as far as props goes, we're gonna look to hit the over 1, 2, and 3.5.
Perfect. I do want to give a shout out to somebody in the chat, KJ. I don't think we gave enough recognition to Gane's kicking game as well, because I think that's going to be very important for him here to kind of just strike and land points while staying away from the big power of Rozenstruik, which is that kicking game, right? Just whether it's the teep, whether it's just a kick to the legs, that should keep him active enough to be winning points and continuing the low volume style of Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And further to your point about Jairzinho versus JDS, if you look up the actual scorecards, they still release the scorecards, even if it finishes inside the distance. 2 of the judges did give that to Junior Dos Santos. And also the Overeem fight. If we had Chris Tyone in there, he's letting it go the extra 4 seconds, right? We're cashing those Overeem tickets if Chris Tyone's in there. Go ahead. What were you about to say?
Well, what I was going to say is if this is on the island in the big cage, it's like, kick game from range is going to be great. He's got a good kicks, good kick arsenal, stay to the outside, outpoint this guy, use speed. But in that small cage in the apex, as you've seen with Lewis versus Blades, it's like, there ain't not a whole lot of space to go.
Especially these big boys.
That's a tricky prospect to think about if you're Ciryl Gane. It's like, I could stick and move, but can I stick and move in this tight space for 25 minutes? Flyweights might be able to, but heavyweights, like there's not a whole lot of space there. So it just makes it really, it's a dangerous fight. The kicks, yes, underrated. I think Gane just uses those to stay at range, but also it's like, what's the best counter to the kick? It's like the punch, kick, land, like catch it straight down the middle, land the shot. Small cage, backing him up. Can he kick while backing up? Is he going to be able to counter with a kick? You're playing a dangerous game, but I think that beyond that, it's the takedown. Everyone's looking at this. You and I spent, I don't know, let's say we spent 15 minutes talking about this fight right now. We spent 20 or 12 of it talking about the prospect of striking, Gane's a good striker, and he might have the distance, and he might have some volume, and Rozenstruik is a great striker, and he's got the power, and he hits you, and you're done. But like the 3 minutes that we spent there, we're like, yeah, Gane might wrestle. I honestly think he will wrestle. I think that's probably going to be come Sunday. That'll be the biggest narrative. That'll be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? He did decide to wrestle. Good game plan. Rozenstruik needed to be short up in that. Overeem took him down rather easy, and when Overeem took him down, it was like, oh damn. Overeem's top game was just way too much for him. Like, and then in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th down the stretch, Overeem's tired. Overeem doesn't really want to shoot the takedowns anymore. He gets off his pedal and stops shooting takedowns and just plays a range game and still has success into the 5th round where he gets his lip busted and gets finished. So Gane could play that game, but wrestle, man. That'd be the way to go. So, yeah. And if he does choose to do so, then we're good on the overs. And if he gets knocked out, then I guess this is another told you so moment. Why do I bet against these guys who have like the grace of God? You know, if this is Greek, like, you know, mythical times, they'd be like, oh, he was dipped into the waters of Kayambe. And when his mother could only dip him in by his hands. So his hands had this like granted ability that if he touched you, he severed your consciousness from your head. It's like, that's this guy, dude, straight out of the waters of Kayambe. Yeah, I'm not fucking with him, but I see where a lot of people would say he's a live dog. He's live in any situation.
For sure. Anybody with that type of power is definitely live. I'm not running to the betting window right now to lay minus 270 on Gane, but I do think he has him beat on a MMA technical standpoint pretty much all around, including that volume. Now, the question does remain, what does this cardio look like if this fight does reach rounds 4 and 5? We got to leave that up to hypotheticals at this point, right? We've never seen it. He was scheduled 5 rounds for a couple times in TKO, but he just never made it that far. So yeah, we go to the championship rounds here. All right, let's get to our best bets portion of this stream. Let me pull it up for you guys real quick. There we go. All right, as always, I'll start things off. So the first one that I got is Alexis Davis to win via decision, plus 245. I think she makes it a close enough fight to make it very grinding and dirty for Sabina Mazo. Mazo obviously has shown in past fights that she's just not the most comfortable fighting off of her back foot. That's what Alexis Davis will be doing in this fight. Luckily for Mazo, she got bailed out with her head kick KO with roughly a minute left. A head kick and then followed up with a submission with roughly a minute left in that Justine Kish fight. But all judges had her up, had Kish up going into that 3rd round. So it was just a couple minutes before she was going to pull off that victory. I will believe a little bit more into Davis's durability. I think she'll be able to eat those shots, keep moving forward, land a couple takedowns, crew control time, and pull off a decision victory. So plus 245, I don't mind that. Ankalaev to win in round 1, plus 225. That's another spot that I like. Again, this card seems a little bit lighter on the prop side. Like I can't really find those plus 700, plus 800s that I'm really running home about. But this one is a spot that I like, especially given how wild and open Krylov leaves himself, especially in these striking exchanges. So if he goes out there, tries to wrestle Ankalaev and fails at it, I expect him to go back to that Krylov that we've come to know and love, which is always cashing those unders, because either he's getting put out, he's getting subbed, or he's the one doing the finishing. But I think that it's going to be Ankalaev that's going to be a little bit too technical for him on the feet, and then he'll find that chin, put him out nice and early. And then lastly, I got Gane by sub, plus 450. This is more so thinking that Gane knows he probably won't be able to go a clean 25 minutes. So just get this fight to the ground. Let's seek a sub, whether it's a Kimura, an arm triangle, whatever the hell it is. We've seen him pull off a plethora of submissions in the past, but that's the side that I'm leaning. I wish I could give you guys a round prop here, but I just don't feel as confident as I have in the past in some of these plays. But Ankalaev round 1 plus 225 is just going to have to do. All right, Cody, you're up. Let's get it going.
Okay, yeah, so I'm going to start off and go out there and go with Jimmy Rivera by decision. And I know I talked about how Pedro has a chance to win this fight, but I honestly do think that Jimmy is a decision guy. They run this back the same way they did a couple of years ago. The same path to victory for Jimmy exists and win. Now, this would be an interesting way to look at this fight as well. You could bet $100 on Jimmy Rivera by decision, and you could bet $100 on Pedro Munhoz by decision. If Jimmy Rivera wins the fight, you break even, right? If Pedro Munhoz wins the fight, you win $210 because you lost the $100 that you bet on Jimmy, but you might make the $310, right? But if you just tried to bet the fight to go the distance, it's minus 235 or minus 260, sorry. Like, this fight is going the distance. It just depends on what side you're on. I'm going to go with the Jimmy Rivera side. But again, I mean, I just think that it's going to be a decision. And yeah, I like Rivera to come out on the other side of a close one. Then we're going to go with Kevin Croom, plus 580. This one could be potentially a blessing in disguise because I originally sent to my boy Locke. I said, yo, give me William Knight and Alonzo Menafield over 1.5 rounds. Thinking, Menafield probably tries to pace himself again a little bit like he did in the OSP fight, and a little bit older, and they have cardio issues, and Knight likes to press it up against the cage over 1.5. You go from like a minus 130 play to a plus 580 Kevin Croom by decision. Again, I think this is more aligned to the thinking process of Locke, right? You can go out there and try to land a couple minus 100, minus 125s, a plus 125 here and there. Oh, we got plus money, guys. We got a plus 130. Or it's like, man, hit this prop that if it hits 1 in 3 times, 1 in 4 times, you're getting a nice big plus money play with it. With Kevin Croom, it's the same thing. We talked about it, the Derek Minner fight from last week. It's like, can this guy go out there, use that strength, use that physicality, use that wrestling, establish top control, hold this guy down, evade the submission attempts, grind up some points, and then win a decision? Yes. Minner was a huge price tag on a decision victory because people didn't really see it happening. Croom matches up similar in the same ways. Being out of Glory MMA and Fitness out of Kansas, I really do think James Krause is going to have a good game plan together for him, put it to good use, go out there, take Bruce Leroy down, hold him. And the flip side for Caceres is that he's been in there with a lot of top-level competition. He's struggled with low-level competition. He's struggled with mid-level competition. And he's looked good at times as well. He's on a 3-fight winning streak right now. But again, you look at the guys he's beaten, it's like, I don't know. Now you can say, oh, well, he could get submitted himself. I mean, Croom's got a good submission game. And yes, it's entirely possible. But, Kevin Croom ain't Kron Gracie. So once you get that out of the way, it's like, hopefully he'll be able to do exactly what the two guys before Roosevelt Roberts did, and that's just, survive, get some rounds in, bang some rounds in, outstrike him in spots, but eventually get taken down and lose those rounds. But Croom 580 for decision. I mean, it just looked too good to not pass up for that little sprinkle, so I want to include it here in the Proppin' You Up 3 prop bets. And then we're going to round it off with Justin Jacoby by decision plus 200. So again, this goes back to the fact that Max Grishin hasn't been finished in a 3-round fight in 10 years. He's fought in at heavyweight. He's fought a ton of big heavyweights. The last guy to finish him clean was Magomed Ankalaev. No shame in that. And it's in the 4th round of a championship fight. Grishin is durable with his submission defense. He's durable with his chin. I like him there. Justin Jacoby, meanwhile, he's got the striking advantage. Cardio leaves something to be desired. But again, he's at elevation. He's at, Factory X Muay Thai, but he's at elevation in Colorado. Cardio shouldn't be an issue for at least 2 rounds. And then after that, play it smart. Play it defensive. Do what you got to do to secure that victory. But if Justin Jacoby goes out there and just wins a striking affair, turn this into a kickboxing match, land those kicks, he's got faster hands, he's got heavier hands, and just chip away at this guy, then I think he should have Grishin's number. And to that extent, plus 200 for Jacoby by decision. Jacoby straight up, it was like, okay, yeah, it is Justin Jacoby at the end of the day. And Max Grishin's looked terrible in the UFC, but I want to give him a pass. The Tibura fight's tough for anybody. And, in the last fight against Antigulov, it's like, it is what it is. But whatever, you want to give him a pass, but ultimately it's like, as far as this fight plays out, keep it as a kickboxing match. Jacoby's a little more refined, a little more volume, a little more power. I think it's going to decision, and so for that price, I'm going to take Jacoby by decision on the plus 200. So yeah, we got even money play on Rivera, and then 2 nice looking plus money plays. Would be nice to hit all 3, but if you even hit a couple of them, it's going to be a nice weekend.
Just for a note, I was definitely on that Jimmy Rivera via decision as well too. I just don't like giving you guys the same bets. Let's give you guys a little bit more variety there, but the one that I definitely like the most is Rivera by decision. If you're getting even money there, you're pretty much playing him straight up, since the guy is really not much of a finisher, and this isn't Marcus Bribbins that we're talking about on the other side of the cage. So yeah, great. I think that we got some solid prop bets here. There you guys got them, and let's just wrap this thing up. All right, so that's pretty much UFC Vegas 20. Solid card overall. I think we got 10 or 11 fights at this point in time. Knock on wood that we don't have any dropout between now and the fight's actually going down. And obviously, you guys can find us tomorrow for the final weigh-in at 9 p.m. Eastern, where we have the full odds crew. Me, Cody, Bleed, as well as MMA Prediction Guru. Can't wait for that. That's always a hoot to go have a discussion with you guys for like 2 to 2.5 hours like we had last week. But hopefully we don't get that far given the less amount of fights that we have to go over this time. So shout out to everybody in the chat. If you haven't already, make sure you guys hit the like below. And if you haven't subbed yet, or subscribed, I should say, please do that as well too. That's a great way to support the show and support the channel as well, to have us coming back on a week-to-week basis here. All right, Cody, I'm going to give you the platform. Anything you want to say on the way out, then I'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, chat looked great tonight. So thanks for stopping in, spending your Thursday night with us. Obviously, we are back at it tomorrow night. And yeah, well, at least we'll have a little bit more information, which is the weigh-in. And we'll be able to analyze, like, is it Jared Gordon? He's got an extra 5 pounds to work with. He looked good. or is it Ketlin Vieira? She did not look good. And, you know, it's 2 pounds over. Like, you know, we try to always process as much info as we can get. And that Friday, that's your last little nugget of info. They show you the weigh-ins, and we'll be able to break down what we think there, wrap up some picks, lock some things in, and get after it. So thanks for everyone for joining the chat tonight. And yeah, I'll see a little bit of you guys tomorrow. If not, how many of you guys can come through? But yeah, good. It was a good show.
For sure. I always chopping it up with you. I love chopping it up with you. And then getting another extra 2 guys in the seat tomorrow is always a great way to just get a full perspective on things and hopefully get other points that we haven't brought up this time around and see just different points of view. So yeah, shout out to everybody that showed up, subscribe, like, do all that stuff. And we'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern for the final weigh-in on odds.com.